Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Here, let me fix this. I'm already off to a screwy start because of the layout, but I hope you are suitably impressed. People asked for the chalkboard back. Let me get the comments back up here. Good morning, good morning, good morning. People ask for the chalkboard. You ask, you shall receive. Look at that. How about it? Chalkboard back. Episode 29, John Lund Unleashed. Happy Friday. I hope you're well. Not only are we broadcasting live to my good friends on YouTube at John Lund Unleashed, we're on X as well, at John Lund Radio, at John Lund Radio on Instagram. So no excuses. Whatever way that you like to listen to the show, there we are. As you can also notice, I thought this music was going to stop, man. As you can also notice, new microphone today because the old one was like, it was on its last legs. And so you're like, hey, bro, like, let's stop that. Let's not do that anymore. So new microphone, new setup. Hopefully you can hear me very, very well. In fact, I will go over to the comments. Let me see here. Morning, folks. Great to see. Nathan is here. Tacky is here. Sports Girl for Life. All my good friends. Steve is back today. Love to see you. You had some great stuff yesterday. Danny, who else do we got? Enrique is here on a Friday morning. Jared, good to see you. Don't know that I've seen you before. Hurley Bird, awesome. By the way, if you want to hit some comments, I'll pop the best ones up during the show on a Friday, but I got a ton to go. And if you're new to the show, thank you very much for tuning in. And as you can see on the right-hand side, for the first time since I made the change to this new format, I've got a chalkboard up there, and it serves two purposes. It helps me stay on track, which is, if you're a regular to the show, is not easy because my ADD kicks in. I take medicine for it, but it just doesn't seem to work so well. But episode 29, Robert Saleh, we're going to discuss him. He interviewed for the job for the 49ers, which I didn't know that Robert Saleh had to interview. It's like, you can just look at my resume. I was a great defensive coordinator. We went to the Super Bowl, remember? But apparently they needed to talk to him. You still are a defensive coordinator. Yeah. Okay, great. All right, man. Anyway, he's going to also interview with the Raiders. He's been a hot commodity, Jacksonville, all that kind of stuff. And I do have some Raiders things to discuss today. Would Jake Moody have made the field goal that the Notre Dame kicker made? And I got a lot on that game today. It's something to do with what Greg McElroy said at the end. And it was perfect timing because yesterday I told you we talk for so long in this business that we're bound to be wrong, but not right before something happens. So we'll get into that. 49ers issues as far as the audio and video are fixed. And so even though I don't want to go back to yesterday necessarily and go through all those things, I have 3 clips out of the 7 that I was going to play for you yesterday that I think are pretty critical. I think critical to talk about. So we're going to go back and go over that ground one more time. Brady is running the Raiders. Clearly, I don't want to get into that whole situation because some Raiders fans, and I used to do Raider pre-half and post, if you didn't know, back in the day, and some people think that my vitriol, no, that's too strong of a word. I don't have vitriol for Mark Davis, but you know the story probably of Papa being fired by the Raiders and how it happened. I was there when it did, and I'll go over that ground really quickly, and then what happened to him last year when he went to Vegas for a preseason game and all that stuff. It has nothing to do with that. I like the Raiders. I have nothing against the Raiders, but we'll get into that. Playoffs, and that's going to be a reoccurring theme throughout the show today, the NFL playoffs. In fact, that is going to be the big poll question, and I am going to play the big poll open because it's really fancy and we have it. But the big poll question is just get you going, get your mind going. Who are you rooting for this weekend in the NFL playoffs? And who are you rooting against? Now, if you're out of the market and you're tuning in somewhere across the country, and we're seeing more and more in the analytics that people are doing that, so that's incredible. But if you don't know me, I did KNBR radio in San Francisco, a 50,000-watt blowtorch since 2016 to almost present, so about 8-9 years. And before that, I was at 95.7 The Game in San Francisco and was part of the original crew there, which started on August 1st, 2011. But I love talking about national stuff as well. So we get into a little bit of that. And like I said, I used to do the Raiders, I did the Niners for years. So we'll get into that conversation. I forgot what I meant by root. It'll come back to me. I got a great Notre Dame story for you today. I got a great Drew Rosenhaus. I didn't put Rosenhaus up on the chalkboard today, but Drew Rosenhaus in the NIL, I know that it's absolutely crazy, but I don't know if you were watching the Pat McAfee show yesterday, but he talked about it, and you're like, oh my God, it is the Wild West. I want to play that for you. I think you're going to really like it. Odds. There's some Sasaki odds out there, and a sweet, clean, family-friendly caboose pistol that actually I'm going to need your help in, because I don't know if this is true. So much of the internet now with, especially with AI, you can put things that aren't there. You can certainly change voices and all this kind of stuff just on that front. And then again, I'll get out the lines and say hello to everybody and good morning on a Friday. John Lund Unleashed on YouTube. John Lund Unleashed pod on YouTube is what you do. So if you would subscribe and like, that would be outstanding. We're on X as well. So let's say you got to go. Oh, I got to go. Well, just take it with you. You got your phone with you. Take us with you. It doesn't mean you need to leave the show. We're on Instagram as well. And then right after the show, we hit one button and we're up on a podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your favorite podcast. So no excuse to miss the show at all. The caboose thing is, it's a guy up in Sacramento. Hey, Danny Golding TV. The KNBR signal comes in pretty good usually at night here in Arizona. I'd love to know where you are in Arizona. But, when I would go down for spring training, it was absolutely the wildest thing you could get, because what happens is, not to get too deep into radio, but you have to power down during the day, and then you don't have to do it at a certain time at night. And so the KNBR signal can be heard all over the West Coast. I can remember driving in the middle of nowhere in like Wyoming or Nevada or whatever, and you could get the KNBR signal. It's absolutely bananas, the strength of that signal. But anyway, I digress. So there you go. That is the news for today. I do have a bunch of other stuff that I have as I look at my notes here that I've got to get to as well. But let me start with this, and then I want to get to the 49ers things that I missed yesterday, and then you can take the show wherever you want, because I take a good look at the comments in the comment section here, and it's new with this new operating system that I have. I mean, the chats just go, so it's flying by. So if I don't get to your chat, I will try to get to everybody. But I was just telling my wife this before I came on to the show, and I am trying to shower every single day and look presentable. I think being a professional is big in this. So if you notice, that's very nice. And again, if you were regular to the show, you're like, dude, you wear a hat every day. And you can see the hats behind me. I'm a big hat guy, and so I got millions of them and all sorts of different ones and everything. And I may pop one on during the show, but I do enjoy it. But here's how this is kind of funny. I hope you'll like this story. Some of you are here because of storytelling, and I do love to tell stories. So hopefully that's acceptable to everybody. If it's not, give me some feedback. I always love it at John Lund Radio on Twitter mostly, but I'm on all social media channels. And also right after the show, comments during the show. I love feedback. We had a conversation yesterday. Somebody said, you're like everybody else and you don't like when people disagree with you. No, that's completely the opposite of actually. So I love your feedback on the show because it makes the show better. And in this way that we're doing the show now on all these different platforms, it's much, much easier for me to get the feedback. So I love it. So please, please, please. It's not only do you disagree with my thoughts on sports or life or anything like that, I'm totally fine with it. But also I want your feedback on the show so we can just make it better. I don't want to sit here and think, and I tell you this all the time, I know everything. I wouldn't exactly call it a democracy, but it's not like you're living in, Russia either. So I love getting your feedback on things. If enough people say it, here's my philosophy on this. And this is a life philosophy. Sorry to do this on a Friday because we're going to have a lot of fun today. But if enough people say it, then it's probably true. If a few people, and I told you this yesterday, a few people will attack and they'll take personal shots or anything, and I'm fine. I honestly, I'm an unattractive man. I'm cool with it. Like all the different, personal, whatever. I'm cool. It's totally fine. You're not going to offend me at all. But if a few people do that, I really don't take anything into it. But if a lot of people come to you and say, and you get feedback, and it's the same thing with you, like at your job, if a lot of people give you feedback, then it's probably true. That's kind of the thing. But anyway, I'm talking to my wife this morning. One last thing, and then we'll get to all the sports today because there's a ton. We're going to be here for a minute. So get yourself comfortable, grab yourself some coffee. I actually did what I normally don't do. I got myself a Rockstar because I was a bit off today, but I feel great now that we are together. But I just walked in with my wife before I showered, and I said, what's so cool about this job, and I've been doing this 25 plus years, and it's always been this way. So at night, I do a few things to get ready. I have a bunch of pictures to show you and videos and fun stuff like that and all that. And so I prep that the night before. And then in the morning, I wake up in a cold sweat just about. And today was one of those days because I'm an early riser. I love getting up early. Lately, I've been a night owl as well. So I'm burning it at both ends because the show is new and I want to make it great for everybody. And hopefully we're accomplishing that to a certain extent. But so I set my alarm for 5:30. And then this morning, I hit my snooze, which I never do because I used to do morning radio for about 10 years. And from 6 to 10, and I would get up at 3:30 in the morning. And if you don't get right up at 3:30 in the morning, if you hit the snooze ever, you're done because it's not natural to get up at 3:30 in the morning. It's just the stupidest thing. So if you ever listen to a morning show, and one of the rules in the morning show is you can't complain about being tired. You just can't complain. People do not care. So you just put on this face and you do it and you're bouncing off the walls. But what it is it's a mental exercise because like I did 10 to 2 for years. 10 to 2 is the best time slot in all of radio or anything because like you get in there. Well, I would get in there about 9 o'clock, but that's not too early. And then I'm not going to get distracted by a golden shower. Nathan, I'm just not. But so 10 to 2 is, and then you get off at 2 o'clock. So you never hit any traffic. It's the perfect time of day. You can hit happy hour at 3 o'clock. You're never tired. Like you just have to worry about the show. You don't have to worry about anything other than, and same thing with drive time. So I did drive time for a long time. For a lot of you, Tom Tolbert and I did a great show together. It was highly successful. It was not Ralph and Tom. It certainly was not Razor and Mr. T, but it was very good and rated very well. And I love doing drive time with Tom. That was a lot of fun. You're never tired. But in the morning, part of the thing is it's just, and you probably know this if you get up early, it's a mental exercise. So when my alarm would go off at 3:30 in the morning, and most of the time I was in Detroit and it was snowing and it was hell driving in and all these kind of things, but I had to pop up in the morning and go, it's the greatest day ever. I can't wait. You had to fool yourself into thinking that. And George, my son, was extremely young. And so I got up a couple of times during the night, whatever the case may be, because my ex-wife worked and we had, so it's like, it's not like I go, hey, go take care of that screaming kid. I had to help. So it's crazy. It's a mental exercise in the morning. But for me, 8 o'clock is not too early. So anyway, there's the story on that. And I told you I wouldn't go off on too many tangents today, but that's a good one as well. Let me make sure that, we'll get into that. We'll get into some Notre Dame stuff that I have. Man, the Rams and Vikings are moving to Arizona today. Anyway, I'm just saying don't hit the snooze button. NFL playoffs. And again, before I get to this, I'm going to get to this right now. But a reoccurring theme today is who are you rooting for in the playoffs? Who are you not rooting for in the playoffs? And let me pop this up before I get to the 49ers stuff and address and say hi to everybody this morning. So let me just share my screen with you for just a second. If you remember who is in the playoffs today, there it is right there. So those are your games coming up this weekend, in addition to Ohio State and Texas tonight. So you had the awesome game last night between Notre Dame and Penn State, which I'll get to. There's a lot of different things to discuss with that. But NFL, and then Ohio State, Texas tonight. And then tomorrow, and these are Pacific times, which they never give us. Everybody thinks they live on Eastern time, and we have the best time as far as sports are concerned. We never have to go too late. Having lived on the East Coast briefly, it's like, man, it's late. But they get to sleep in. So I guess it's depending on what you like to do. Chargers at Texans tomorrow on CBS, 1:30. I guess, are you looking at the fighting Harbaughs and thinking you'd like to see Jim Harbaugh go far? Maybe. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I'm going to do this a little bit later, but I don't like Russell Wilson. So Steelers at Ravens. And then on Sunday, Broncos at Bills. You can see that in front of you. Packers at Eagles. Do you not like the Eagles because of the rivalry kind of with the 49ers? Commanders, maybe like Jaden Daniels. Buccaneers. I don't have an opinion on either of those teams. And then the game on Monday, which just got moved, Vikings at Rams. You probably don't like the Rams. So because the 49ers are out of it, is there some team that you are rooting for or rooting against? So that's going to be a recurring theme on the show today. So however you want to do that, we will make that. So make sure you hit that up on the chat line, and I'll make sure to get to everything. And again, thank you so much for joining us. John Lund Unleashed on a Friday edition of the show. Make sure you're telling your friends, subscribe, like, all those things. Podcast, I gave you that as well. So make sure you're listening. And again, we're on YouTube, X, and Instagram. Everything's coming in, flying in There's Joy today. Joy, good to see you. There's Jacob today. There's Keeping the Faith. Very cool, man. I like that. Keeping the Faith is here. Avatar is here. Bills Chargers. There you go. Anyone but the Eagles, Joy P says. So keep that as a reoccurring theme throughout the show today. There you go, Nate. I would probably agree with you there. Most people in the Bay Area, even though I didn't give them because the top seeds have the bye. So Detroit and Kansas City clearly not playing this weekend. Anybody but Kansas City, says Nate. I think that's probably, let me pop this up just because that's a great comment. Look at that Avatar. Very nice. If I could do a Scooby-Doo, I would, but I don't feel confident enough in doing it. I can often look like Shaggy. I can't really grow facial hair. I could grow a goatee, a spotty mustache, no beard. Absolutely not. So I can look like Shaggy if I try to grow any kind of facial hair out. There's another one, Sports Girl for Life, anybody but the Chiefs. So everybody's like, not the Chiefs, anything else but the Chiefs. So we're off to a good start. So again, welcome to everybody. We're like 16 minutes in the show and I've accomplished nothing whatsoever. So let me get to these 3 cuts because we believe we have fixed everything. And you guys weren't hearing feedback yesterday. I was. And so I went back and watched the show and I went, everything's fine. So if we get feedback, that's on me. And I'm not going to make you sit through those kind of things. Also, if you could give me some feedback on the microphone, because I was wearing for the first part of the show, I was wearing a headset mic, and I went back and watched the show yesterday and I was cutting out a bit. And I didn't get a ton of feedback on that, but I didn't like it. And so I went out yesterday and bought a really nice mic and everything else. So everything I got, I made things different a little bit, so everything is good. HR says Warriors get a win, Lund. I can get distracted by that, but I'm going to do that a little bit later. Does Guy Santos, who saved the Warriors in Detroit last night, he never plays. I mean, he's way out of the rotation. In fact, he's player 12 of 12, I believe, on this roster. He might be player 15 of 15 a lot of times, and he probably has an apartment in Santa Cruz where the Santa Cruz Warriors play. But he saved him yesterday, and he looks like Danny from Ted Lasso, does he not? Now, he doesn't anymore because he cut his hair, but he did. Football is life. He looks like Guy Santos. In fact, let me just get this out of the way and play. And because if you haven't seen this, he does. Now, he cut his hair, so possibly he doesn't look like that. But I did a Google search on this guy, and the big picture to the right there, does he not look like Danny from Ted Lasso there? Warriors is life. And, he's done a bunch of stuff. He looks like more the short-haired Guy Santos, but in that big picture that I'm showing you right there, where it says Guy Santos on breakout performance at Nets, that was in February. But he saved him. And Steph Curry after the game, Draymond Green after the game is like, wow, he saved our butt last night. So anyway, there's a quick thing on Guy Santos. Does he not look like him, or am I completely, absolutely crazy? Pat Spencer. How did Pat Spencer get on this team? He looks like it looks like Pat Spencer of the Warriors, and I don't have a picture of Pat Spencer. And I could get one, but it would probably take too much time. You know what he looks like. Or you could right now just Google it yourself. But Pat Spencer looks like a guy who won a contest to be a Warrior. Does he not? Like, it's time for you to win a spot on the Warriors. And all of a sudden, because there are people that I'm amazed by this, but they pay enough money for it. People who absolutely are basically sitting on the bench. Like, people are sitting next to LeBron James and Steph Curry. I don't know what those tickets cost. I have no idea, and they're a ton of money, I'm sure. But it's like you won a contest to be on the Warriors, Pat Spencer. Now, I know he played, I think, lacrosse, or he's a really good athlete, but he's wearing 61. He doesn't look like he's necessarily a great athlete, which I'm sure he is. But it's like every time I see him on the court wearing 61, and I'm sure that means something to him. So I don't want to disparage the guy, but it's like, did that guy win a contest to be on the Warriors? He just looks like an average guy. It's crazy. So anyway, Hurley says, happy birthday, Marcus Freeman. Go Irish. We're going to talk about the Irish today at length because it's a lot of college football stuff that we need to discuss. But let me quickly get through these things and play these things that I thought I was going to play for you yesterday and was very upset that I could not. So there was 3 things that I thought were very relevant to our discussion, and we didn't get to them yesterday, and I explained them to the best of my ability, but I really wanted to play it. So let me start with Brock Purdy, because that's what we do, right? We try to get as many people watching the show, listening to the show, interacting with the show as we possibly can. So in order to do that, you talk a lot about Brock Purdy. I mean, that's just what you do, and all other national stories that are big. So let me start with the contract side of things, all right? This is John Lynch Has it been 48 hours now? Yeah, it has. This is John Lynch on the contract talks with Brock Purdy.
For a long, long time. He's done so much for our organization. He's won big games had a little tougher task, as we all did this year, with some of the things that happened throughout the course of the year. We just never could string games where we were all together. And through that, he continued to lead. He continued to play at a high level. So we have every interest in him being around. The way this thing goes, these press conferences are necessary, but always kind of silly because Kyle's coaching. We spend time together all the time, and there's big issues that affect the team. But he's just getting off coaching. He's had his door shut for 2 days, doing exit interviews. We were just up, but we were talking about our players. We'll have some time here in the coming weeks to sit together and put our whole plan together. That's obviously a priority, that position, and we'll give it that attention.
All right, so there is John Lynch, and let me get John Lynch off the screen and let me get on the screen, even though that's unpleasant for most people. So there's John Lynch. So that's the contract side of things, and I think you and I have discussed this, and we discussed it before John and Kyle spoke, and it was pretty obvious because if I could come up with it before the fact of John Lynch saying it, it's obvious, and so did and Brock Purdy said the same thing in his exit interview, which is we got to get this done early. This cannot be a July, August, September. I was trying to think of putting those 3 months together, and I struggled with it. July, August, and September. This cannot be that because, as you and I have talked about on many occasions, he's got to be in. He's got to be throwing. There was a divide, and so when people want to complain about Brock Purdy, and on the national level, he is getting babakooed. I mean, absolutely. Everybody says you can't give him the money. You shouldn't give him the money. This is a bad idea. There's not a better option. And again, you and I have talked about that. So we don't need to go down that road. But from a national standpoint, and maybe I just shouldn't care. But there's a lot of people in the chat, and there's a lot of people listening and watching the show today that are out of market, and I absolutely love it. So I'm not going to sit here and defend Brock Purdy. His first 2 years were great. Last year, and this is, again, we talk about excuses and explanations. Maybe this sounds like an excuse to you, but to me, I'm going to take it as an explanation so you can react on that kind of thing. And if you think I'm wrong, that's completely fine. But I'm not making an excuse for Brock Purdy. I am saying this is an explanation that he just tried to do too much. He didn't have the weapons. He didn't have the confidence. Therefore, Brock tried to do too much. And I think the combination of the offense, hopefully for 49ers fans, coming back and being healthy will give him confidence to be back to the Brock of his first 2 years, which is I'm a point guard. I control this. I don't turn the ball over. I don't make bad decisions. That's my superpower. I'm not going to do those things because I have the confidence that everybody's coming back. And then the second part of it is what John Lynch said right there, which is he's going to get this deal done early, which is not very 49er-like, but they understand, and they're a smart organization. They understand that it's absolutely imperative that Brock Purdy gets the deal done, and then he can be part of the offseason program with the 49ers, throw the ball with everybody, because as I told you yesterday, his agent is not going to allow him to get anywhere near a football field, a practice field, anything, because any type of injury can happen. And even if it's a low risk, all of a sudden Brock Purdy goes from $40-50 million after making $1 million, poor Brock, to now a guy who's like, he's got an injury issue. What is he going to get? A make good deal. So this is absolutely massive for a guy. And look, for me, he's probably made enough money off the field to be, as much as we talk constantly about what Brock has not made, he's made a lot of money off the field. I'm trying to think his rookie year, we had him on from the Super Bowl. Was that LA? I can't remember. Anyway, his rookie year, we had him on at the Super Bowl. No, it was Arizona. And he was doing like panini, not the sandwiches, but the cards. He had like 3 or 4 things that he was doing. He just gave out 10 $85,000 Toyota trucks, vehicles, Sequoias, whatever's, to his offensive line. Let's not get started on do they deserve it or not. But I mean, so he spent $850,000, which I'm sure Toyota probably gave him as part of the contract. But so he's got a few bucks, is all I'm saying. So they're going to re-sign him, and they're going to re-sign him quickly. Now, this is one that I wanted to play for you, and maybe we can move on after this as far as the 49ers are concerned, unless you want to discuss it more. But this is the one where, so Dre Greenlaw, as I told you before, he is going to be released, and they're going to save some money on that. Yeah, we can get into the interior defensive line, which is not great. Debo, everybody's hitting me back on all the social media channels saying, hey, Lund, You said that Deebo Samuel was not going to be back. Did you hear what John Lynch said? And I told you, it's lying season all the time in sports. So I'm not saying that Deebo's necessarily going to be back or not. No, I think he's not going to be back. I'm not going to backtrack on that because of what John Lynch said. I'm just saying that a lot of times what GMs say right now and then what GMs say after they've kind of put all this thing together, and maybe I'll play the Dre Greenlaw thing just a little bit, just because Kyle Shanahan addressed it 48 hours ago, not so much because of Dre Greenlaw, but because, hey, we haven't done anything yet. So in one sense, he was talking about we don't know about Dre Greenlaw. And another one, he quickly said, well, Deebo Samuel's under contract, but everything's not done and nothing is even started so far. So with that as the backdrop, here's Kyle Shanahan and his love for Brock Purdy. So if from a national standpoint, and I'm surprised, I guess, that this maybe hasn't gone national because there are still people saying, I don't know, bad idea. The love that Kyle Shanahan has for Brock Purdy is like a father and a son. Take a listen to this.
It was like 9 or 10 weeks. So these last two, and then when we all got back, it was like you could tell we all were back, but, we wish we had a little bit more time. And when I look at a calendar now and realize we have 14 weeks until we need to get back, like I expect everyone to be ready to go and, excited to really get this going and play some football. And that starts with Brock. Like, Brock is the leader of our team. I've loved these 3 years with Brock. I plan on being with Brock here the whole time I'm here. So, like, Brock's been a stud. He's a guy I got a lot of confidence in and just as a human. But it starts with what he's done in the field these last 2.5 years. And we're capable of winning a Super Bowl with him. We just almost did. And I know he's capable. Yeah, definitely.
All right. So that's I wasn't sure if that thing stopped or whatever the case may be. So I don't know if you can more emphatically. I mean, Kyle Shanahan's not an emotional type of guy, so he's not going to yell, it's not going to be like that. But you heard what he just said. I'm going to be here. Brock's going to be here. Brock's going to be here as long as I'm going to be here. Like that's like, you can't say it any stronger. And so conversely, let me say this thing. Let me play this. I said I would only play the Brocks, but this is the last one I'm going to play, and then we're going to move on because there's so many things to discuss today. But here's Kyle Shanahan talking about Dre Greenlaw. And it's Greenlaw, but it's also, hey, we haven't done anything yet. So in one sense, Kyle Shanahan saying we haven't made any decisions. And then in another sense, people are saying to me, did you hear what John Lynch said? Because he said Deebo's staying. And I'm not calling anyone a liar, but at this point of the offseason, what these guys want to do and what these guys will do a lot of times are two completely different things. So let you hear Kyle's response to Dre Greenlaw and the difference in Greenlaw and the difference in what he just said about Brock Purdy.
That's an emotional time for players, for their families, for wives, girlfriends, whoever it is, kids, just like it is for coaches when I can't always tell them exactly what their future is going to be the day the season ends. It's tied to a lot of other people, and I know I've been on that side. I know wives are texting you all day asking what the deal is, and they don't believe that you really don't have an answer yet. And I know what they look like when you walk them through the door and they're like, what are we doing with our lives? And you're like, I don't really know. There's a lot of things that you want to solve so fast for people that is stressful for people sitting in our chairs. But you can't solve everything at once. A lot of things are tied together. And when you hear things like that or Greenlaw, like we're doing everything in the world we can to bring Greenlaw back. And we're not into losing really good players who are unbelievable people. So we're going to do everything we can to never lose really good players who are good people. But that's also a very hard challenge, very hard. And that's something that you don't just talk about in one meeting. There's too many things that connect to that. Draft, free agency, roster, years, all that stuff. And that takes weeks, months to decide.
And I think the only thing I'd add to that, the communication with the players, what's most important. And I know I sat with Dre and always have great discussions with Dre. I know about his want to be here, and I know our want to have him here. And like Kyle said, there's realities and there's tough decisions and so many factors to all those things. But believe me, the desire on both sides is there.
Okay, so there's the discussion. And again, that's not so much a Dre Greenlaw thing. There was a question directly about, there were some rumors about Dre Greenlaw, and the young lady had asked Kyle directly, are those rumors true? And Kyle just said, look, I just got out of 2 days of meetings with my door closed, end of year meetings. And just, if you're not aware of what happens, because I don't want to assume it, but I don't want to think you're dumb. But the reality is, you probably know this because everything's out on the internet. And we know more about our teams than we've ever known before. So I'm sure you know this, but let me just go back over this to reiterate the point. So what happens at the end of the season, unfortunately, this season ends the way it does for the 49ers. And the first thing that they do, because everyone wants to get out of town and get their break, and as Kyle Shanahan said as well, they get about 14 weeks until they have to be back for OTAs, not the normal 9 or 10 weeks. So that's going to give them a massive advantage. And another reason why I think they're going to bounce back next year. All these little things add up. We don't think about it. We just look at it and we say, well, they sucked this year. Okay. But the injuries are an explanation, and having 2 years straight or for the last 5 or whatever, where you have only 9 weeks instead of 14, and you can recover from these injuries and mentally and all these things. And again, fans think those are excuses, but all these little things add up to massive things. And it has to do with whether your team is successful or not. But what Kyle Shanahan has been doing the last couple of days is, again, ignoring his family, and talking to these players. And as you know from Kyle Shanahan, and maybe you don't, but he is bluntly honest. And one of the reasons why he and John Lynch work together is John Lynch is an eternal optimist, and Kyle Shanahan is a non-apologetic realist. That's what they are behind the scenes, if you don't know. John Lynch is positive. You ask John Lynch a question. What a great guy, by the way. I haven't had him on shows for years, and up on the top level, about the 8th floor. I mean, we're looking down on the field a long way, and he's up there because there's a suite where the injured players are, and John often goes up there, and then he'll go back and forth. You see him on like national broadcast, and you'll see John Lynch. So he's up there in that near that player suite or right by it, or kind of going back and forth. He'll go down to the sidelines as well, but he always stops to say hi, unless he's in a real big hurry. But I'll walk by him, and when I was working with Tolbert, we would have John Lynch on like every other week, and he still says hi to me all the time. He's a super nice guy. And like I said, he's very much an optimist, and Kyle Shanahan is a realist. And so Kyle Shanahan has the meetings with these guys, shuts his door for 2 or 3 days, like he said, and tells these guys, here, this is the truth. This is what we think of you. This is what we want you to do in the offseason, et cetera, et cetera. And then he goes right into that press conference, to just give you a little bit of background on this. And then people ask him questions. And I'm not ripping on the person that asked the questions. They're not wrong to ask that question. That was the right question to ask. But then he's asked to comment on Dre Greenlaw, if they're going to keep him or not. Or asked, in Cartwright's case, they had to say, yeah, he's getting released, because he is. They restructured his contract. And I saw that. I'm like, okay, he's going to get released. And a lot of people were coming at me in regards to Debo saying he's going to keep him. They just haven't made those decisions yet because they haven't had time. Now, have they discussed things? Sure. But he's been tied up for the last couple of days and talking to players. So that's kind of what's going on with the 49ers. Any thoughts, comments, questions? I want to stay in the NFL, and then we're going to get to college football because it's such a huge story. But let me scroll down a little bit on the comments to make sure we are good and nobody has any questions, comments, thoughts. And I can always go back to the NFL. It's not, me. It's not like we're not going to bounce around a little bit, but that's just kind of a thought process. And I wanted to play those yesterday, and I was really frustrated that we weren't able to do it. So be able to do it today. Good morning, Pine Needle. Good to see you. Sports fan. I want to make sure. Voltron Force. Don't know about this regime anymore. Let me pop that one up. I look, I don't have to say anything positive about these guys anymore. I mean, I call it like I see it, and I always try to call it like I see it, regardless if I'm on the radio in the 49ers flagship or not. But on KMBR, I went down there like 3-4 times a week. So I'll be completely honest. I'm not going to rip these guys to shreds, and I'm not going to do that either if I don't believe it. I'm not a hot take guy. I don't sit here and think to myself, what can get the most clicks? How can I be crazy? Whatever. Like that. I just try to call it like I see it. By the way, Joy P, one of our best friends, I saw it earlier, and so I'm not going to scroll all the way up to the top. You said that your daughter is going to be watching the stream. I'm going to be on my best behavior today. My best behavior. Because there's another thing too. I talked to my mom yesterday, which I hadn't in a long time. And she's older. It still looks great. Still, everything's great. So if she's watching today, love you, Mom. But she's starting to watch the show. And it's a lot easier for her to watch the show. So I got to watch my P's and Q's to a certain extent. I go off on these tangents. I forget who I'm talking to. I even forget that the microphone's on. And then it's like, oh my gosh. Alaska Outdoor. Abdul Carter, by the way. And that can transition us into college football talk. Although I have one more thing to say, and then on the NFL, and then we'll get going. But yeah, that'll put a pin in that because we got to talk about the Notre Dame game. But Abdul Carter, and I know there's a lot of needs for the 49ers, and we've talked about them, offensive line, defensive line, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So wherever falls to him, falls to him. I don't think Abdul Carter, the defensive end, edge rusher from Penn State, who was awesome last night despite the loss, and he wears that number 11 that LeVar Arrington wore and that Micah Parsons wore. That's kind of a big thing for Penn State, just like the number one receiver, the number one jersey at Michigan is a big thing. They make a big thing for a lot of those, and Abdul Carter is awesome. And if he were there at 11 in some way, shape, or form, which I couldn't believe he would be, I'd be all over that dude, man. I'd be like, woo! By the way, Wes, you're saying something about Happy Friday and let it fly. Absolutely, I will. But I saw earlier, Wes, you were saying that the LAFires, which we need to acknowledge that before we move off the NFL. The Rams and the Cardinals for Monday, or Rams and Cardinals, the Rams and the Vikings for Monday night are actually going to do what the 49ers had to do at the end of the pandemic or during the pandemic. They had to move their operations to Arizona. And because of the fires in LA, that game has been moved from SoFi Stadium to a State Farm Stadium. That thing looks like a flying saucer in Arizona. So that thing has been moved. And not that I thought that the Rams were going to win that thing. And I've told you many times, if you're new to the show, I've covered games at SoFi Stadium, and they have a girl down there who plays guitars like, first down Rams house. And then she's like, and she plays like Eddie Van Halen. It's like, oh my God, it's like a complete attack of the senses. But in LA, and I was born there, it's like, you can't just have a football game. You got to have a whole show, which I swear to you, the football game is good enough, but I digress. So that game has been moved on Monday night because of the fires, and absolutely crazy. And the reason I bring that up, Wes, is that I saw earlier you said something about an Olympian and their 10 medals being gone. Like, there's certain things, and I can't even imagine what's going on in LA, what's going on in terms of, the losses and all these kind of things in Pacific Palisades. If you know anything about Southern California, it's a very well-to-do area, and that's not even sufficient. What I just said, it's a very rich area. There's a lot of people who, own lots of things, and lots of celebrities have lost houses. I think last night we were watching the news, which is a depressing thing to do, and I don't often do because I want to have a positive outlook on life. But I think that the losses have added already up to $53 billion, $53 billion in Southern California. And my first thought was, oh my God, my insurance rates are going to go through the roof for my house. And a lot of, not to get into the reality of the world here, because we are the toy box, I'm just going to do this briefly. But if you're from California and you're watching the show, listening to the show, however you're consuming us today, our rates are going to go through the roof because we've had to change providers for our house because a lot of these major companies are like, we don't want to be in California anymore, earthquakes, fires, whatever the case may be. And so they're pulling out. And so it's like, oh my God, my rates are going to go nuts because $53 billion, it's kind of like sports. When a guy gets paid, prices rise, right? Like the more expensive it becomes, they don't just eat that. The owner goes, I guess I'm just going to have to eat that money. They pass it on to us. Ticket prices, all these different things. The NFL ticket goes up, all these, YouTube TV, all these things get affected because somebody's got to pay somebody a bunch of money from a sports sense. So if we go to the reality of life, State Farm, I'm just thinking of a team of something, or Progressive or whatever your insurance is, Farmers, did I say that one already? They're not going to just eat $53 billion. They're going to be like, okay, this is going to the consumer. That was the first thing that went through my mind. All right, let's get out of reality. We don't want to do that. I don't want to be in reality. You don't want to be in reality. So let's get away from that. One more quick thing, and then college football galore here. And I'm only addressing this, and I don't address everything. Like I said, if one or two people say something to me, it's like, whatever. But if a number of people say something, then I'll address it. So I don't know if you know the Raiders story. This is a fascinating story. I hope it is to you, but I do. I think it's a fascinating story. So I'm going to relay it to you before we get to college football talk. If you're from the Bay Area, you probably know this story, but I'll reiterate it because it's gonna have an ending that makes sense and is relevant to the show. So Greg Papa, the voice of the 49ers, he's a good friend of mine. We did shows together at 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area in San Francisco when the game started in August of 2011. And then we did shows and we were reunited in 2019 on the 49ers flagship when he became the play-by-play voice of the 49ers. The powers that be wanted us to be back together. And so we did a show for many years, and he's still a really good friend of mine. So what had happened was when he was the voice of the Raiders, Al Davis had passed away. He was very close with Al. And as I've told you before, Mark didn't really do a whole lot. And so if Al were alive or somebody else, he basically had a lifetime contract with the Raiders and could essentially do no wrong. But what happened is that I think they hired Jack Del Rio eventually for this. It's hard to keep the Raiders coaches straight, from Josh McDaniel to Antonio Pierce to who they're going to do now. And Tom Telesco, their general manager, was safe until he wasn't, because I'm sure Tom Brady said, nah, I don't want that. So Greg essentially said to Mark, on the radio with us when we were at 95.7 The Game, that Al Davis would be turning over in his grave if, ironically enough, he knew that Mark Davis was interviewing Mike Shanahan. That's how long it's been, was interviewing Mike Shanahan, because they had a big falling out. You know that. He was the Raiders coach for a short period of time. Al became agitated with him, and then he went to the Broncos and kicked the Raiders' butt for a long, long time. So Greg simply said on the radio, because he was used to Al being around and he could say pretty much whatever he wanted when he was the voice of the Raiders, was Al would be rolling over in his grave if he knew that Mark Davis was interviewing Mike Shanahan, because clearly Al Davis fired him and did not like, excuse me. See, there you go. Get over it, John. I understand elevated minds, and I love that you are calling me out on this thing, because I don't just say that. I think it's great. But this is why I want to explain it, because people misconstrue it all the time. So he fires Greg. Greg takes a year off. He gets the job with the 49ers. I don't know if you know that story. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but the person who is in charge, who is a great guy, Bob Sargent, he and I were in Hawaii with a trip with KMBR, and it was late at night, probably 2 a.m. We're having probably far too many martinis or margaritas. I don't remember what it was, or maybe fufu drinks and pina coladas late at night in Maui. And he asks me, you think Greg, this is before he got fired by the Raiders, you think Greg would ever consider coming over to us, the 49ers? And I kind of smiled. And I said, you know what, Bob? I think he would, because I knew at the time that he and Mark were not doing well. We went to a Fred Biletnikoff golf tournament, and Mark and Greg were not talking. It was very awkward, and you could just tell that, like you said, Jacob, Mike Shanahan did sue Al Davis. So it was a very uncomfortable. We knew that it was coming. And so I'm telling Bob Sargent, like, oh my God, yeah, this is going to happen. So then fast forward to, his relationship was strained because Mark had let him go, but he landed on his feet as he is because he's so great. And he starts doing the 49ers. And for a while, people thought that was odd, and Raiders fans were upset. Guy's trying to make a living. He's got kids in college. It's, he's a play-by-play guy. That's what he does. We did a show together. It's very successful. It was very successful. But at the end of the day, Greg Papa is one of the best play-by-play guys on football that there is, especially on the radio. And again, everything's subjective. It's all those kind of things. Maybe you don't like him. Maybe you do. I happen to love him because he's a great guy. And that's where I think the kind of disconnect happens, because Greg doesn't need me to defend him. But last year on the radio, and the Raider fans got mad at me for this, I wasn't down there at the time. I went to the game, but I wasn't down there for the week of practices, and they were being jerks to Greg, basically, to put it kindly. And all the other broadcasters who were broadcasting this preseason game were really close to the field and were asking questions, and they made Greg be with the rest of the media, which is really far away, and they couldn't see anything. And so people, again, misconstrued that as, and I went on a rant about it on the radio, and people misconstrued it as, you don't like the Raiders, you're taking a shot. It wasn't that at all. It's just and it wasn't an ego thing or anything. They just were treating him differently than the rest of the media, and they were being assholes to him, essentially, and that's what happened. So then yesterday, I go on and I put out a tweet, and I should have it on the board, but I don't have it. But I put out a tweet. Maybe I do have it. But I put out a tweet that essentially said, because they fired Tom Telesco yesterday, the Raiders did. And so I put out this tweet that essentially said, look, you can fire all the different guys you want. And I think we even mentioned this yesterday, that from an ownership standpoint, and this is not just sports, this is in general in business, whether you succeed or fail, it starts at the top. We talked about Jed York yesterday and how he kind of got things, and Mark Davis kind of struggles with these deals. And all I did is put out a tweet that said, look, as far as this organization is concerned, it's rotting from the head down. Mark Davis, used to not know what he didn't know, and he would let operations do things, but I think he's gotten confident and cocky, and he likes being in Vegas, and he's a big deal. And so they're firing all these different guys, which they could never afford to do before. And then so people were hitting me up with a bunch of stuff saying, get over it, Lund, get over it, your buddy Papa. It had nothing to do with that. I'd like to see the Raiders do well. I worked for them for a long time, and seeing Mark Davis fire all these guys, but it's not Mark Davis anymore. It's Tom Brady. And I don't know if Tom Brady is going to continue to broadcast. Maybe you think he's terrible. Maybe you think he's good. But I don't think Tom Brady is going to continue to broadcast because he's running the Raiders right now. He is 100% running the Raiders. So kind of interesting. All right, let's get to college football. Anything else on that? So I just wanted to explain it. Maybe I didn't have to, whatever the case may be. But it was just something because not one or two people hit me up. It was a number of different people, and they said, get over it. They screwed your buddy Papa, whatever. He landed on his feet. He's doing fine. He doesn't need me, of all people, to defend him. It was just, I looked at that thing, and I'm like, and I'm saying this in a positive sense, not a negative sense. I'm like, people are getting on me. Like, what successes Mark Davis had? I saw something that, they've had one playoff appearance in like 21 years, whatever. It's just been crazy. All right, let me get to this Notre Dame stuff because I want to give you something really interesting. They win last night. I'm going to get to the field goal kick. Greg McElroy said something. Drew Rosenhaus before the game said something about NIL. So hopefully you like college football because this time of year, and I love this 12-team playoff, and I've really enjoyed everything. So even though on KMBR we didn't talk a lot about college football, I think that there's a lot of interest in college football. Again, I'll go out to the chat line right now. You tell me, do you love talking about college football? Do you not do it? Because in the Bay Area, if you're not in the Bay Area, let me explain. We don't talk about Cal. We don't talk about Stanford. There are certain markets that I've been in before. I keep bringing up Detroit because it's this way. Michigan football, Michigan State basketball are huge. If you're up in Seattle, a friend of mine, they love the Seahawks. They talk the Seahawks, but they talk a ton about Washington State football. So it just depends on the market. We didn't really talk a lot about college football, but I do think it's really intriguing right now. So you tell me, because again, I want the show to be about you. I want the show to be about what you want to talk about, what you want to hear. I think that if we're doing compelling content, no matter what we're talking about, you'll tune in, but I could be 100% wrong. So let me go to this picture right here, because to me, this is an interesting story. To you, you might go, what the hell? So Notre Dame wins last night, 27-24. If you didn't see it, we will talk about it. The quarterback of Penn State, Drew Rosenhaus, who a lot of people are thinking is a first-round pick. He certainly didn't look like it last night. And with about 30 seconds left in the game, tie game at 24, James Franklin, who is terrible in big games for Penn State, decides that around his own, 25-yard line with about 30, 40 seconds left to go, that he's going to take his quarterback and they're going to try to win the game with like 30, 40 seconds. And we've talked about how conservative Kyle Shanahan is. Sometimes you just got to go, we're going to play for overtime. Penn State, from a talent standpoint, is probably better than Notre Dame. But as we all know, they don't play it on paper, Lund. I know. But go to overtime. Just go to overtime. You can't trust your college quarterback. I don't care who it is. They're inexperienced to try to drive you down the field. That's not smart. And they do that. They throw an interception. Kid makes a great play for Notre Dame. They get a field goal kicker who, one of my questions today was, would Jake Moody have made that kick? You can opine on that. Would Jake Moody have made that kick that the Notre Dame kicker made? And I'm going to play the kick for you because I swear to you, and you know I'm a conspiracy theorist, that ball, this is going to sound weird and you're going to think I'm nuts, and I haven't been drinking, only the rock star, as I said before. No whiskey in the coffee, no nothing. No, it's not smoking, not drinking. That ball was touched by the hand of God. By the hand of God. I've never seen a kick curve that much in my life. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But let me tell you a quick Notre Dame story. So I put that up on the screen for you. If you're watching, if you're listening on the podcast, I will try to make this without the visual as cool as possible. But that's Marcus Freeman. He's the head coach of Notre Dame. To his right, wearing number 50. You see that with all the eye black all over his face? Got a big gut now. His name is Rocco Spindler. He's a guard for Notre Dame. If you're a diehard college football fan, you probably know who that is. He was a top 100 recruit like 2 or 3 years ago. He's from Clarkston, Michigan. Why do I know so much about Rocco Spindler, and why should you care? Great question. Glad you asked. So I tell you about my time in Detroit, and I did a morning show a long time in Detroit. Let me take myself off the screen because it's like you got two things saying I'm not being heard. So I think I'm being heard now. Yeah, I believe I'm being heard now. Am I being heard now? Yeah, I'm being heard now, right? Yeah, just give me some feedback and let me know I'm being heard. So I think I'm being heard now. So the guy in the picture right there, I don't know how far I have to go back, but that's Rocco Spindler wearing number 40. Mark Spindler, I did a show with in Detroit for about 10 years together. My son and his son are roughly the same age. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. They had a big ranch in outside of Detroit, and they played together on a number of occasions when they were like 5, 6, 7 years old. So hopefully I'm not repeating myself too much, but that's number 50 to the right of Marcus Freeman, the head coach at Notre Dame. This is how tough and badass this kid is, even at like the age of 5. He towered over George. They were roughly the same age, and he was probably 3 or 4 times the size of my son. And my son's not big, but he was probably 3 or 4 times the size of my son. So we're hanging out, we're having cocktails, we're grilling meat, we're doing all these kind of things like you do. And all of a sudden, the kids come back from playing, and Rocco has this. His eye is like swollen shut. It is gigantic. Now, if my kid did that, we'd be running to the hospital. We'd be out of there. Thanks, man. And this is kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we'd be racing back. Oh, my God. We'd be freaking out. And Rocco acted like it was nothing. Like number 50 there, acted like, what? No big deal. He didn't even know he had gotten stung. He was acting like it's nothing. Everyone's freaking out. And finally, Mark just goes, he's fine. Like, just put some dirt on it. It's totally fine. So anyway, and he was in the front there all night long, and I was laughing because I remember when that kid was 5 years old. So hopefully that story was worth your time. And I guess I cut out for a minute there, so I apologize. But I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. It was amazing. So let me get that off the screen. But that's my Rocco Spindler story. All right, so let's get to some of the stuff that happened last night in the game because it was absolutely crazy. Now, first of all, I'm gonna go in reverse order here. So I don't know if you know this. But and I didn't grab this. But if you're watching the game last night, when there was about 30 seconds left or 40 seconds left, and Notre Dame scores to tie the game, Penn State gets the ball, I don't know, around their own 25, 30-yard line. The quarterback for Penn State's really good. I don't think he should come out this year, but he's pretty good. He's well thought of. He's got the size, the arm strength, all those kind of things. But it's a young quarterback, and so they're going to make bad decisions. So in retrospect, it's easy to do this, and this is often what media does, and people get pissed when you do this because it's like, well, now you could say it. It's obvious. It's obvious. Yeah, they shouldn't have gone for it. They should have played for overtime. Now, it's easy for me to say hindsight's 20/20, and that's what I have. But the thing I want to discuss, and what that means is, so Greg McElroy, who is the analyst on the game with Sean McDonough last night on ESPN, he says right before they go on the field, I trust Drew Allar. They should go for it here. No problem. And then literally 2-3 plays later, he throws the interception. I'm on the air, and we have no commercials. So I'm on the air roughly every day, 2 hours. When I was on KMBR, I was on the air 4 hours. And as I've told you before, it was, like 32 minutes of content. So essentially it's the same, about 2 hours of actual content, just like on this show. And I'm going to say stupid stuff constantly, and you can call me out. That's totally fine. I'm going to do that because I'm on the air a lot, and you don't pay me here to sit on a fence and get splinters in my ass. It's like, hey, do you have an opinion? What do you think of this? That's kind of why you tune in. And some of you tune in to watch ADD or listen to stories. Everybody's got their different thing, which is totally cool. So anyway, I digress. And so that's what happens. Greg McElroy says those things, and then people are laughing at him today. So that's one thing. But I defy you to say, and I don't know if you watch this or how many times you watch this, but I'm going to play this for you. Watch the ball go from right to left. Now, maybe this happens all the time, and it was in my head that because it's Notre Dame and it's the Golden Domers and all these kind of things, that the hand of God touched this ball and took it right to left. Because when he first kicks this ball, Jeter, I think, is the guy's last name. Derek Jeter. It's not Derek Jeter, but his last name is Jeter. I don't know what his first name is. I forgot. But I think his last name is Jeter because that fell in, and he's wearing 98. Kickers are wearing all sorts of weird numbers. It used to be like 1 through 10 or 17 or something like that. Now like 36, 39, 41. I don't know what's going on. I've been in college. They've always had weird numbers. That's not really relevant to the story. But watch this kick go right to left. And it's like a golf shot, but you never see it go this much. So I think this is the hand of God. I could be crazy, could be on crack, didn't get enough sleep, whatever the case may be. Watch this.
Good. The kick is good.
right, let me play this again. Watch it go right to left.
Snap and hold are good. The kick is good.
One more time. I this may be redundant and you may be getting pissed off at me, but watch it one more
Snap and
time.
hold are good. The kick is good.
Have you get off my screen? Have you ever seen a kick? Am I wrong? I'm going to go back over to the comment section, and I want to know what you think of that. Or if you need me to play it again, I don't think you do. You're like, I got it. I know you do, but I just wanted to make the point because I really want other people to believe and see what I saw. And I don't have the best eyes, so that's why I'm asking you today. Are you kidding? Like that ball went at the last second. Now, maybe the kid can do that. Maybe a lot of kickers do that. And I'm just thinking to myself, the wind can do it. I don't know. I don't think the wind conditions were that drastic last night. But am I wrong? Let me go out there. Maybe it hit a bird. Loved McDonough's reaction. That was a tremendous call. He's a Syracuse guy. Went to school with Papa, by the way. He is awesome. He did Monday Night Football for a while. That didn't work out. He's an awesome college broadcaster. One of the best, if not the best. Mario, this is one of the questions I was going to ask too today. Mario Martinez says, he talks about Moody. Would Moody have made that kick? Do you think Jake Moody makes that kick? If you want to be fancy about it, because I love all this new fancy stuff that we have on the show. Would Jake Moody have made the kick the Notre Dame kicker made? React. I don't know. I don't know if he would have made it, but it was the first thing that probably went through my mind. Would Jake Moody have made the kick that the Notre Dame kicker just made? I don't know. Gee, Mr. Hand, I don't know. I don't know if he would have. It's crazy. All right, I can't help it.
They're good. The kick is good.
That moved crazy. Again, it could just be me, but that ball moved like crazy. And I'm just like, my goodness, was that just me? So I really need your reaction on that kind of stuff. I don't know. I thought it was like the hand of God, like Notre Dame will not lose this game. That was nuts. It was a great reaction too. And anybody? No. People are like, you're nuts. All right, here is one thing I want to mention, and then we can move on to some other things in terms of this. So this happened before the game on the Pat McAfee show. Oh, now see, I knew I did this. Oh, shouldn't have done this. Hot button topic in the Bay Area. If you're not watching or listening or whatever it is from the Bay Area, people are down on Jake Moody. So we can see. There you go. English. Jacob says he put English on that kick. Maybe I've just never seen. Yeah. See, Hurley Bird gets it. Jacob says English or English. That's how I spell English. Let me go back up. There's a lot of people. Steve, our good friend Steve, is back today. I saw the kick as being lucky. I do think Moody would make that kick with a good placeholder. You bring up a good point. Some people are saying with the new punter that they had for a while, he made those kicks in college. He did. One of the reasons why the 49ers drafted Jake Moody is because of his performance in the college football playoffs, because they think, you make those kicks there. It's more of a mental game. I tell you about all the time. Lots of guys in college have big legs. It's a mental. It's more mental than maybe any other position in not necessarily in sports, but certainly it is. It's absolutely huge. But anyway, I believe that kick was touched by the hand of God. You may completely disagree, and that's fine. We can still be friends. All right, let me give you this, because even if you're not into college football, and I thought about this, I thought about playing this today, and I thought to myself, even if people don't like college football, this is fascinating. So I've got a great Drew Rosenhaus story after you hear this. So if you don't know him, and you probably do, but I want to get everybody involved and not have anybody left out of the story here. Drew Rosenhaus is an agent, and he's obnoxious, and a lot of guys in Florida. And if you go back to Jerry Maguire, in which was the Lee Steinberg story, and Lee is out of Newport Beach, and we've had Lee Steinberg on, super agent. And you go back to the 80s and 90s, and he had everybody. He had Dan Marino and Steve Young and all the great quarterbacks, Troy Aikman. That was Lee Steinberg, and he was Tom Cruise's character. That's what most people say. I think that's true. In fact, Lee has told us that before. So if you go back to Jerry Maguire, Lee Steinberg was Jerry Maguire. Well, Bob Sugar, that was Jay Moore, the comedian Jay Moore, who's married to Jeannie Buss, by the way. Man, that's crazy. Isn't that link crazy? But Jay Moore, who's married to Jeannie Buss, the owner of the Lakers and the daughter of the late Jerry Buss of the Lakers, is married to Jay Moore. Jay Moore played Bob Sugar, and Bob Sugar was based on Drew Rosenhaus. He's obnoxious, all those kind of things. And I've had Drew on my show before, so I want to tell you a Drew Rosenhaus story. But before we get to that, they've got to do something in college football. It's absolutely bananas. I love the college playoff system. And I've always been an advocate that they should pay the players. I mean, you're sitting there and they're the stars of the show and you're not paying these guys and you're just raking the dollars. So I'm glad they're paying players. I think it's long overdue. The system that they have is kind of screwy, and we all kind of know of it, but listen to Drew Rosenhaus tell the story yesterday on the Pat McAfee show. And he's going to mention a guy named Mason Graham, and that's another guy I would absolutely love for the 49ers to get. Now, he's probably going to be a top 5 guy out of Michigan, but he's an awesome defensive tackle. And especially with the coming release of Javon Hargrave, it would be amazing if they could get this guy. I wish they had 5 first-round picks because I like Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. I like Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. I told you Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State last night. I mean, I could go on and on about all the guys. Banks, Kelvin Banks, the tackle out of Texas. I'd like all these guys, but you can't have all these guys. So he's going to mention Mason Graham in this. He's a defensive tackle, really good defensive tackle who now is going to be eligible for the draft. So with that as the backdrop, here is Drew Rosenhaus on the Pat McAfee show talking about how crazy and how Wild West the NIL, name, image, likeness is, and this is the way that college football players are being paid. Take a listen.
That we signed this year. We started representing Mason as a freshman at the University of Michigan.
So good. Game record.
But he's amazing, but
he'll be a top
just
guy.
NIL. It's just
NIL we started, and when his season ended, he hired us to represent him for the draft.
So it's year-to-year contracts or until you become a pro?
It really,
everybody says these NIL contracts are shite right now. Do you agree with that? Or
if you're asking me, they are year-to-year. Okay, so players right now are professional football players in college. They get a new contract every year. There is free agency every year. There is no salary cap. There are no rules. The ability to transfer is almost unlimited. Guys getting paid coming out of high school. I love it. I'm for the players.
Yeah, making money.
I love it.
But there has to be some sort of system.
Absolutely. In any system, we need structure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every other professional league
in anything
has rules.
Yeah.
We have a cap. We have a structure. We have a draft order. We have waivers. We have trade deadlines. This doesn't exist in college football, so it is very chaotic. But to get back to your question, a guy like Mason Graham.
All right, so there is Drew Rosenhaus, and I think you get the gist there. Let me take him off my screen. So maybe you knew that, maybe you didn't, but to hear an agent like Drew Rosenhaus, who now you just heard this, so you know what he just said. So I'm going to go back and tread a little bit on that ground that he just said, just so I can reiterate and make my point. So Mason Graham, defensive tackle, Michigan, they started recruiting him. Not in college, where in the NFL, and I'm only explaining this because this just shows you how deep and crazy this is right now. So you used to recruit a kid, maybe his sophomore, junior year in college. You would start talking to a kid about representation, all this. Well, Drew Rosenhaus, as he just told you, he's starting to now recruit kids in high school, sophomore, junior year of high school. If you show promise, he wants to get you the NIL money in college, which you can make money off of, and the player can too, which is absolutely great. And then he, in this case, as he said, now he's going to represent Mason Graham in his NFL journey. And he said that, that doesn't always happen, but in this case, it is going to happen. So first of all, Drew Rosenhaus is loving it. And as he said, he says, I'm all about the player. I'm all about the money. So he isn't doubling his money, because still when you get to the NFL, a Mason Graham is going to get, I don't know, he's going to be in the top 5. So I don't know, $30-40 million guaranteed, all that stuff. He's probably got a valuation. You got to learn this term. What is his NIL evaluation? What's his NIL valuation? What's his NIL valuation? What that means is what you get for playing the game. Quarterbacks get a ton of money. A guy like Mason Graham, he's not transferring from Michigan, but he could. A lot of guys are now going 3 and 4 different colleges, all those kind of things, literally every year. So could you imagine if a professional sport did this? So just when college football figures out a playoff system, which is not perfect, but still, for years and years and years, it was so screwed up. And I've told this story a million times, but it's like, okay, let me get this straight. College football. Every other sport has a playoff system. Every other sport, you have to win your championship on the field, on the ice, on the grass, on the court, whatever the case may be. You have to prove it. It's not just a bunch of people in a room saying, we're going to rank these teams in this order, and these are the 4 teams that are going to, we're going to semifinal and a final, and we've decided they don't have to do it on the field. It's just what we think and what we've seen, and these are going to be the best. Could you imagine if other sports did that? We're not playing a playoff. We think right now Kansas City's got one loss. They're really good. We voted that the Ravens are going to be in the championship game against them, and then we're going to go to the NFC, and the best team is the Lions, and then we think that the Eagles are the second best team, so that's going to be the Final Four, and then whoever wins that goes to the Super Bowl. Could you imagine if that was the case? That's what college football obviously did. We will decide who the best four are, and then that, and there's bias and all that kind of stuff, and the SEC is great. Well, now that we found out in this 12-team setup, and I know the first round wasn't great, and they'll tweak this kind of stuff, but the SEC isn't the best. They didn't automatically go anywhere, so it makes it a lot better to me. So right when they get that correct and they finally play it off on the field, they now have a system in which free agency, it's all one-year contracts. Could you imagine if another sport did that? We're back to, even though this is kind of a weird way to say it, we're back to nobody else does it this way. You can't have just a one-year contract for everybody. I'm all for paying the players. They're the stars on the field. They're the actors. They're the lead actors in the movie. Nope, not paying, I don't know. This was the first name that popped in my mind. I don't know why. We're not paying Harrison Ford to do this movie. We're going to keep it all. Well, of course you don't do that. That's not very democratic or American it's not even about America. It's just what's right. So you got to pay people for a job, whether they're in college, whether they're a professional, whether they're an amateur. There is no amateur anymore. People make tons of money. There is no more amateurs. Everybody's a pro. That's what Drew Rosenhaus just said. But could you imagine if NFL, NBA, so Steph Curry is under contract for 1 year. That's it. So whoever gives, and there's no, as Drew Rosenhaus just said there's no salary cap. There's nothing. So right now in college football, the best teams, I think, maybe I'm 100% wrong, the best teams will never have to develop a young quarterback. My senior quarterback just graduated. My God, we're going to have to go through a couple of bumps because we're going to have a guy who's never played before. He's really young. He's inexperienced, but we're just going to have to go through a couple of bumps. That never happens because then if you're a big school, you have this NIL fund, name, image, likeness fund, and a quarterback right now in college football, because it's obviously the biggest position and others make money. But if you're a quarterback right now, I can't blame these kids. Even if they're going to be first round picks, first overall picks, type 5 picks, whatever, right now, a quarterback in college football is worth $1 million minimum, a good one. In the transfer portal, a quarterback is worth $1 million minimum. And like a kid, and I only know this because my kid goes to Arizona State, so I'm more versed in that. Their quarterback, Sam Levitt, who's already transferred from Michigan State, came back because after their bowl game, you have 4 days to declare whether you're staying or going into the transfer portal. And he had an NIL valuation of $3 million. $3 million. And so Arizona State, I don't know if they came up with the exact $3 million. They just had a great year in which they went from 3-9 to 11-3. They're really excited. You're going, you want to stay. There's momentum there. They got a great young coach. So Sam Levitt goes on to Twitter/X the other day and says, I'm back, because it's like everybody's holding their breath. Like, is our quarterback, who was the best freshman quarterback in the country, is he going to come back? Or is Alabama going to steal him? Or is Georgia going to steal him? Or is, whoever's quarterback is graduating. Carson Beck is leaving Georgia, and he was going to go to the NFL, but he decided, you know what? I can transfer to a team and probably make $2 or $3 million. Like Quinn Ewers, the quarterback at Texas. He could go in the draft, but he could probably use another year in college. But in the old days, it was like, I don't want to have another year of eating top ramen. Like, why would I do that? I don't want to do that. I'm going to the draft. But now you can stay in because there's rumors that he can make $3, $4, $5 million next year, which again is not NFL money, but it's life-changing money. And he can stay in college another year, make $5 million. Then when he's really ready, and I talked to you yesterday about there's not a development system, not a quality development system in the NFL for quarterbacks, and that's why they fail. So when we sit here and we say that guy sucks, that guy sucks, that guy sucks, if he's not ready to play in the league like Trey Lance, and a lot of people have misconstrued what I've said about Trey Lance, where was Trey Lance going to develop if he didn't play? But if he played on a good team like the 49ers, they can't afford to let him make those mistakes where a bad team can. A lot of times you draft a quarterback like they're going to do this year, like the Giants are going to do, the Raiders are going to do, whoever is, near up at the top. Well, Titans have the first pick, so the Titans are going to take a quarterback. They're bad. They can take a couple of years, unfortunately for their fans. They can take a couple of years, and they can develop him. He's going to play. He's going to take his lumps. He's going to throw the interception. But the thought is, hopefully he'll come out on the other side of it. Well, the 49ers could never do that with Trey Lance because they are trying to win. And they couldn't afford Trey Lance's bumps, so that when Jimmy Garoppolo, for example, when Trey got hurt, Jimmy Garoppolo's there. You got to play Jimmy. When Jimmy gets hurt, Brock shows he can actually play. That's the exception to the rule. So it's hard to develop these guys. So now what happens is Carson Beck is being told by the NFL, you're not getting taken in the first round. Go back. Well, normally he's like, that's a hard decision to make because I am giving up money. I'm not going to do that. So now Carson Beck is going somewhere. He's favored to go to Miami, for example. Carson Beck's a quality college quarterback. He needs more seasoning. So he's going to go to Miami next year and probably make $3 million. Remember in college when you had to eat top ramen and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to rub two nickels together, let alone, I mean, these guys are living in like huge condos that they've probably bought all cash. Can you imagine being friends with that guy and you're living in this tiny little apartment? You're an offensive lineman. You can't get an NIL deal. And your quarterback's living in like $1 million condo overlooking the ocean in Miami. Like, what the hell, bro? Life's not fair. Anyway, that's my rant on that kind of thing. It's the Wild West, and every year, you're a free agent. So if Steph Curry could be a free agent every year, would he still be here? There's just not, I mean, guys are going to be, and this is just the way it is in college, and maybe you do love it. But there's a huge difference between saying, these guys should be paid, which everybody said, hey, no doubt, these guys should be paid. But now it's gone to this Wild West kind of a situation, as you just heard from Drew Rosenhaus, the super agent, where it's like free agency every year and there's no salary cap. So it's got to be that, right? Like Oregon, for example. Why has Oregon become so good? They've always been good, but now they're up there with the best programs, and they always will. Well, Phil Knight owns Nike. Phil Knight went to Oregon. Phil Knight is going to fund a championship. They will never have a bad quarterback. Like they just got Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel just graduated after he went to 3 colleges, Central Florida, Oklahoma, and Oregon. And he's about 5'11". He's not a big guy, so he may not make it in the NFL. And if he does, he's probably going to be like a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick or free agent. So Dillon Gabriel just got probably, I don't know, over the last 3 years, 5, 6, 7, maybe $10 million. I don't exactly know. But he's probably set for life. I mean, if you invest that fairly, that $10 million should take you through life. So he doesn't even have to play in the pros, and he's probably okay as long as he has a decent financial advisor. That is insane to me. What do you think? Give me your thoughts on that. And again, maybe you don't care whatsoever, but I thought that was such an intriguing conversation that they were having that, look, I love college football. I love college athletics. But as we kind of move into this thing, and there is no leadership in college athletics. I don't know. I mean, commissioners of conferences and everything else. But if, let's say, just for the sake of this conversation, you're the head of the SEC that everybody has always assumed is the best college conference, and Georgia has money, and it's about your alum and how much you can put into this NIL fund and everything. But Alabama has a huge one, all these things. But Phil Knight has the biggest one. He owns Nike, has a ton of money. He's their number one supporter. So he's like, what do you need? Do you need facilities to impress kids? Done. He's done that. They have a basketball court named after his son. Matthew Knight Arena. He donated that money. It's just like boom, boom, boom. What do you need? I'm Nike. Nike backs the Ducks. They're a professional football team. That's not a college team. So every year, Dan Lanning, their coach, can get just about any kid he can in the country. Right? I was reading. I know I'm a dork, but I was reading the college football recruiting. It's bad enough that I'm talking about the draft. Oregon's got the number 1 recruiting class in the country, and it's not only high school kids, they've crushed in the portal. Well, no kidding, because Phil Knight said endless supply of money. Oregon should be the most dominant team in sports, in their particular sport, for as long as Phil Knight is alive, and maybe a long time after that, because he's Nike. Anyway, we can be done with that. I thought that was a really fascinating conversation. Thoughts on that? Are you cool with it? Or do you just like, I really don't care? Achilles Smith says, HR, good thought. Third overall pick. I think it was the 3rd overall pick of the draft. Anyway, I thought that was incredibly fascinating. I don't know if you found that conversation to be fascinating at all, but I just thought this is crazy the way that this whole thing is going. So that's my college football rant. We can talk about it or whatever. What else do we have on the agenda today? We've had a great time. We're about an hour 16 into this. So let me take a quick break from sports. And just let you know, John Lund Unleashed, if you are new to the show, I really appreciate you hanging out. Happy Friday. I hope everything is awesome for you. It is a Friday edition of the show. Please make sure if you're on YouTube, and I like to drive everybody to YouTube, but I like to be on all these other forums as well, and all these other platforms, I should say, forums, platforms, stages, whatever they want to call it. At John Lund Radio Unleashed Pod. That is how you subscribe on YouTube, so please do that. We are on X right now, so you can take us with you at John Lund Radio on X. I'm not going to mention Twitter anymore. It's just X. Or maybe yesterday I said I'm just going to call it Twitter, not X. I can't remember all the things I say. And then we're on Instagram as well. And on Instagram, I'm at John Lund Radio. So you can take us wherever. And then we have a podcast as well. So after the show, as I often say, you hit this button. And wherever you get your favorite podcast, you can hear the audio version of the show. So thank you so much for all those things. I really appreciate it. And I love that all this, we can have all this fun in this forum. I'm checking out the chat line as well and talking about all this kind of stuff. JJ Raider saying, take a look at John, humble bragging that he can read. Catch me up on that. Because I'm trying not to do humble brags. I like people who are, I don't want them to do that. And Johnny, I need some iron-on patches of your show. Let's see. Let me show you something real quick. Hang on. It's only going to take a sec, I promise. So this is the hat of the show. Would you guys buy this? Now, it does have a bit of an iron-on patch there, so I want to make these trucker hats better. So we just ordered a few to see if people would be down with it. By the way, I have a child's version of this. They accidentally sent us a small, like if you have a toddler, you can have this hat. Not this hat. I'm gonna get a bunch of these. So if you want one of these, it'd be great. It's free advertising for me, and it's a cool trucker hat, I think, of the logo of the show. But I'm not gonna reach back and get that one. But I have a toddler version of that hat, and I don't know what we're going to do it. We don't have any toddlers around our house. So if you want it, you tell me. You hit me up at John Lund Radio on Twitter/X, and I will. I have some T-shirts, though, but the iron, I don't like it. It's a black T-shirt, and it looks like an iron-on logo, so we're going to find somebody else better. Hi, Alaska Outdoor. Aloha. Are you in, even though you say Alaska, are you in Hawaii? So anyway, if you like those hats or something, or if you would actually buy stuff, cool. We'll do that. We'll absolutely do that. We'll sell some stuff. But I do have to stay on track here. I do have a child's version of a trucker hat. So if you want it, at John Lund Radio, hit me up, and the first person to do it can have the hat. I know, it's like, would I want a hat for a child to wear of your show? Probably not. No, probably not. But I'm just saying, I'll give it to you. That's it. I'll give it to you. All right. One thing I want to mention too, because speaking of, and then we'll get back to sports, I promise. And again, reactions to the show, I got the comment line up. You can always hit me up anywhere, whether it be on Instagram, on X, or on YouTube. That is my preferred method, at John Lund Radio, at John Lund Unleashed Pod. That's how you find it. And please subscribe and like. I'm trying to get those numbers up on YouTube. But one thing I wanted to mention today too, so let me get over to my media here really quick. And this is not a plug or anything like this, but I'm going to be totally truthful for you. I love doing the show with you. I will do it even if I do it for free. This is what I do, and I've been doing for 25 plus years. I love interacting with these people, and this forum, as I've told you, has been absolute bliss for me. It's just really cool, and I'm just a junkie for it. So a lot of people, they get off the air, and it's not an ego thing, and it's not I need accolades. It's not anything like that. It's just I like interacting with people. I like talking about it. I love sports. So this is a passion for me. I think I just saw in the chat room say, how do you keep your energy up for this amount of hours? Because this is if it doesn't come across, I love doing it, and I've been doing it for a long time. And so to quit just because radio said to me, you make too much money and you're not worth it. Okay, I can accept that. I disagree with you, but I can accept that. Just because radio said that doesn't mean I'm going to go out and find a 9-to-5 job, because I've never had one of those, and I'm not going to start now. So anyway, that's a long way of saying at some point the show needs to make money. And so what I'm going to do this weekend, and look, if you don't have time, and I'm not forcing you to do this and everything else, but Hanson's Vodka, which I've talked about before on the show, Hanson's Vodka is out of Sonoma. And they're good friends of mine, and they're family owned, and it's really cool, and it's organic, and all these different things. And so I'm going to switch something up really quick. Let's see, just so that I can tell you one thing, and then we'll get back to sports, I promise. So I'm watching the count on people in the room, so I want to make sure people don't leave when I do this, but it's a quick advertisement, just quick. All right. We're not going anywhere. It's not 28 minutes of spots like it used to be on KNBR or anything like that. And these guys aren't paying for me for this, but it's Hansen's vodka, as you see on the left of your screen right now. That's the espresso vodka that they have right now. It is absolutely phenomenal. If you're into espresso martinis or anything, it's a great vodka to use for that. They have all sorts of different vodkas. That's just the one because it's a limited edition one that they make in the winter. And then they have the grapefruit that they make in the fall. I think I've told you about this. And then they have all sorts like Meyer lemon and mandarin orange and the regular habanero, which they make all year round, which is a Bloody Mary, an awesome Bloody Mary vodka. So that's Hansen's. They are great, and they're up in Sonoma. So this weekend, and I'm going to pop up one more Hansen's, and then
The only thing better than
no, that's not the one I want to play. Let me see. I think it's up here. Oh, here it is. So Hansen's does this awesome. Look at that. So that's Hansen's, and that's their outdoor area. They also have this indoor area that's absolutely awesome, where you go inside and they make custom drinks, and depending on the season, and they have food, like I said, they have a little pizza right there. Just an awesome spot. It's in Sonoma, and the reason I bring it up is that if, let's say, you're going up there this weekend, or you live up there, or you live near there. I'm probably about 45 minutes from Napa or Sonoma. And I love going up there because my wife, we're meeting some friends up in Napa and Sonoma this weekend, and they love to go wine tasting. And I'm not anti-wine. It's just not my favorite. I like wine fine. It's just after, a couple of wineries, after you stop at a couple of places and you're catching a buzz. And I know you probably don't want to mix booze, but I always say, I'll go up to Napa with you, honey, if we can just stop at Hansen's, because I'm a vodka guy. And then you see on the right-hand side, I've got a bottle of that double barrel I've showed you a couple of times. If you're a regular listener or viewer of the show, you've seen me take shots of the double barrel Hansen's 100 proof, awesome, smooth. It is just such a good whiskey. It's awesome. You can see on there, it says 100 proof, the one on the far right. And so they do that as well. It's just a lot of fun. And there's a ginger there. Let me go left to right. It's the original, the cucumber, the Meyer lemon, the mandarin, the habanero, which I told you is great with Bloody Marys. And there's a ginger there that's really good with Moscow Mule. So anyway, I'm a big fan of Hansen's vodka. And they are I'm going to go up there on Saturday. Some friends of mine and I are going to go up there on Saturday. So if you're around, come up to Hansen's and hang out with us. I'm going to be there about 1:00 on Saturday in Sonoma. Just look it up, Hansen's. And you can do tastings. They do vodka tastings just like they do wine tastings. But it's just a cool spot. And they have this room inside that is absolutely great. They even have, they can do large groups or anything. But it's really cool. They have great bartenders. They're family-owned. It's up in Sonoma. So if you need a break from wine tasting and maybe you're going to go up there this weekend, stop by Hansen's and say hello, because I appreciate your support on the show. And we're going to be up there at about 1:00. And when we've talked about Hansen's before in the past, we've had a ton of success, and people are, going up there and they're doing stuff. And so we're just like, we had a bunch of success. So we want to show them that the show can have a bunch of success too. So that's what we're doing. So we're doing all that kind of stuff. Let me put the chalkboard back up because people enjoy the chalkboard. There we go. There's a chalkboard back. So anyway, quick hitter, done with that. But Hansen's is awesome. And if you're around and you're up there on Saturday at 1:00, let's hang out a little bit, and we can talk and say hi about the show or talk some sports or whatever it is that you want to do. So great thing, great fun. We're going to be up there. So I would love to see you up there as well. All right, where do we need to go next? Let me get the chat room back up here and see what people are chatting about. Before I do that, and jump back out to the lines. Let me see what we have hit today. We got into one thing I didn't hit about the 49ers. Let me do this because I'm kind of want to do this where I kind of go back over the show and I look at my notes, which is on the board now, so I don't even really have to do that. So we've discussed we have not discussed the playoffs a lot, the NFL playoffs. We have brought it up. College football, we've talked about Guy Santos. I brought that up. The Warriors win last night. I don't know. Do you want to talk anything about the Warriors? I'll go in that direction. I have their box score from last night if you want to do that. Hansen's, I just told you about. Odds. Oh, that's a Sasaki thing. I'll get into that in just a second. The Notre Dame story, I told you about Rocco Spindler. Oh, I didn't tell you about Drew Rosenhaus. So I did that whole thing on Rosenhaus. So I was working in a market, and Drew Rosenhaus, the super agent, had saved a kid's life. He had jumped into a pool, saved this kid's life. And so we have him on the next day, and we talk all about it for like 10 or 15 minutes. And then I asked Drew Rosenhaus, which, again, I want to give him full credit. He saved the kid's life, jumped into a pool, saved the kid's life. And so afterwards, we wanted to have him on to talk about that. And then we wanted to talk about certain players that the Lions wanted to re-sign. He goes, "No, I'm not into that," and just hung up on us. We're like, dude, what? So he hangs up on us after he got all the accolades for saving a kid's life, which give him a ton of credit. He saved a kid's life. But then we wanted to talk about other things. And he was like, "No, I don't have time for that." All right. The other thing that I haven't gotten much into today, and I would like to get into with you, is Robert Saleh. I have that on the board right after episode 29. I have Robert Saleh right after that. And I really haven't talked a lot about it. So Robert Saleh, I think I have a thing that we can that we can pop up on the board here so that we can be impressive for everybody. But Robert Saleh yesterday interviewed for the job. I guess I don't have one of those. I thought I had something on Robert Saleh. But anyway, Robert Saleh interviewed for the job of defensive coordinator of the 49ers. And I'm thinking to myself, do we need Robert Saleh to interview? I mean, don't you know him? I guess. I mean, I don't know what's changed since he became the let's see. I'm looking for that. I guess I don't have it. I'm looking up on what I have open. I guess I don't have a Robert Saleh. I thought I did. But that's regardless. It doesn't really matter. But Robert Saleh, I don't think needs to have an interview with the 49ers, but he did. So if Robert Saleh doesn't get a head coaching job, he's going to be the defensive coordinator of the 49ers. I really believe that. I haven't heard anything that came out of the interview, but clearly if Robert Saleh, between all of his head coaching interviews, is doing an interview with the 49ers, maybe he knows something, but he's interviewed or is interviewing with the Jaguars. There's a report out today that he's interviewing with the Raiders, which, if I'm a Raiders fan, Robert Saleh would be amazing. Robert Saleh is organized. He's just everything that head coach should be, but the Jets was just a weird situation. So I think Robert Saleh would be great. But just to go back to what was my top thing there, I think Robert Saleh is the number one with a bullet candidate for the 49ers as far as the defensive coordinator position is concerned. And I just think that would be obvious. But the fact that he's talking to the Raiders, the fact that Tom Brady's running that organization, which means they're not going to hire bad coaches on a whim like they did last year with Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce said he's a Raider. I'm going to hire him. That's just not going to happen anymore because Tom Brady, and I don't know what kind of executive he's going to be. We've discussed this. Buster Posey with the Giants. I hope he's going to be good, and it's a great name, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a great executive. But clearly Tom Brady is running that team. So that's where that is. NFL-wise, we talked about the NFL playoffs. Hit me up and tell me who you're rooting for and rooting against. That is one of the storylines of the show today. And just as a quick reminder, let me just pop it up on the screen for you one more time, which is this is who you have to choose between. And this is not, obviously the number one seeds are not on this. So you can throw the Lions in there as the number one seed in the NFC. And you can throw the AFC number one seed, obviously Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs at 15-1. So those teams aren't playing, so that you can include that. But the fight in Harbaugh's tomorrow, 11-6 versus the Titans. So you got D'Amico Ryans there, but Jim Harbaugh, a lot of people in the Bay still love him. Steelers, I don't like Russell Wilson. So these are all my thoughts too. And I think I'm sure you go through the same thing. So I don't like that guy. I'm not rooting for them. I'm not a big Ravens fan either, but I don't like Russell Wilson. So I'm not rooting for the Steelers. They're at the Ravens. And I think the Ravens are absolutely a threat to the Chiefs in the AFC. You got the Broncos there, the fighting Broncos. I got nothing against the Broncos, but I think most people, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think most people would love to see the Bills win. They've got long-suffering fans. And then what happens is we want a certain team to win, but we don't want them to become like the Red Sox. So the Red Sox won so much, it was like, okay, now you're obnoxious. We wanted you to get the one championship, but we kind of wanted it to be like the Cubs. So the Cubs win the World Series in 2016, and then they're never back, and they're not obnoxious. And it's like, yeah, that's how it should be. We want you to win a championship. We feel bad for your fan base, but then we don't want you to be too successful. Then we have to hate you again, and we don't want to do that. Packers at the Eagles. I'm not an Eagles fan. The Niners and the Eagles have a budding rivalry. I give them a ton of credit for bouncing back this year. Green Bay is owned by the people. I always like the Packers. Jordan Love went to Utah State. I went to Utah State, so I guess I'll do that. Commanders at Buccaneers, I really have no opinion. I think that they're in the playoffs, and that's all well and good, but I don't think they're going to do anything. And then on Monday night, because of the fires in L.A., the Vikings are taking on the Rams, and that's going to be in Arizona. We don't like the Rams, and Sam Darnold plays quarterback for the Vikings. So that's my rationale on any of those things. Now, to answer the question, then I'm going to head out to the lines and see what you think. Because the 49ers are not in this thing, I don't want the Chiefs. I don't have a problem with the Lions. The Lions is an interesting one. Let me pop this off the board so that you and I can see each other, whether that's a good thing or not. Let me go back to this. The Lions are weird for me because they're one of those teams that you should be rooting for, right? They haven't won in ever. They've never been to a Super Bowl. You have to go back to like the 50s for them to even be competitive for championships. They've been terrible for as long as I can remember. When you go back to, you go back to like the mid to late 70s, they've never really been relevant. I mean, they were in the same same division for a long time, like Packers and Vikings and Bears and those teams for a long time. They've been up and down, but in my lifetime, The Bears have won a Super Bowl. The Vikings have been competitive for a long time. They've had their peaks and valleys, but they've been a good organization for a long time. If you want to go back to like the 70s with all, they went to Super Bowls, kind of like the Bills, they never won one. The Packers were bad for a long time, really good with Brett Favre moving forward, Aaron Rodgers, and now to Jordan Love. So the Lions have been really irrelevant in their division and in the NFC for a long time. So that might lead you to believe that a lot of, and maybe nationally they are, and they probably are. I would imagine if you did a poll nationally. Oh, look at that right there. There's Tony. John, I got a 2-year-old boy who loves hats. Hook it up. Hit me up. Tony, if you've got an account on, if you have an account on Twitter, hit me up at John Lund Radio. Beanies, great call right there. Don't go ADD Lund. Beanies are a great call right there. Yeah, beanies would be good. That's actually really, really good. That's a really good idea. So anyway, let's get back to it and stay on track. I got the comment section up right now clearly. Who do you want to see win the Super Bowl? That's a reoccurring theme throughout the show today. Who do you want to see the Super Bowl, and who do you absolutely not? So some of it has to do with like Russell Wilson. He was a Seahawk. We don't like Russell Wilson. He's cheesy, not rooting for the Steelers. So it might be that. The Lions, to me, are a sentimental favorite along with the Bills for most people nationally. But here's the problem. If you're a Niners fan, they're going to be good in the NFC for a long time. They're a rival. Wouldn't you agree with that? As far as the 49ers are concerned, the Lions are a rival. So I don't want to see the Lions win it. Maybe, and then as I think about that, maybe if they do win it, then what happens in free agency is everyone, no matter what the sport is, this happens. They think there's some sort of magic dust that a player has who wins a championship. So if you do win a championship, the other side of me says maybe they'll get rated by other teams, because even if a guy's not very good, it's like, well, he's got championship experience. We got to go get that guy. That doesn't really work. But that's what owners think, and that's what GMs think sometimes. And so what happens is these guys who win championships get overpaid because people think that championship experience matters. And sometimes it does for a quarterback. I think there are certain positions, maybe quarterback for sure, because they gain confidence. For a team-wise, if you've won championships and you stay together, I think that's the case. But I'll give you a great example, and Raider fans will know this. Older Raider fans will know this. There was a guy named Larry Brown, not the head coach of many NBA teams and college teams at Kansas and all these different places, and was in the NBA with Denver wearing funky clothes and all that. That's not the Larry Brown I'm talking about. The Larry Brown I'm talking about was a corner for the Cowboys, and Neil O'Donnell, that was who it is. Neil O'Donnell played quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and in a Super Bowl threw him 2 interceptions right to him. Now, maybe the receivers ran the wrong route, whatever the case may be. They threw the ball to him twice, and he was the MVP of the Super Bowl. And so Al Davis thought to himself, I'm getting myself some Larry Brown. He's got championship experience. We need corners. He overpays for Larry Brown. Larry Brown stinks. And the thought process for Al Davis had to be, well, he won a championship. He won a Super Bowl. He caught 2 interceptions. I'm paying that guy. And that's what teams do. So it could be a World Series. It could be NBA championship. Could be in the NFL, especially a quarterback. But they overvalue championships. So in going on a little bit of a tangent on this, maybe that's what happened with the Lions, that they are a sentimental favorite, except I don't think they are in the Bay Area. I could be wrong. Speaking for the fan oftentimes gets me in trouble. But if the Lions win it, maybe they get rated because all these owners and GMs think championship experience matters, which it does to a certain extent. So does that make any sense? So I'm not rooting for the Lions. I'm not rooting for the Eagles. I'm not rooting for the Rams. I'm not rooting for any teams that are rivals for the 49ers. The Bills would be something because they're in the AFC. To me, Bills fans have suffered long. They sit out in the snow. They jump and break tables. They're big into it. As I told you yesterday about weather, it's all they got. They're in upstate New York. It snows like hell. They have to stand inside their fans 9 months out of the year, although they don't. They're out and, they're shirtless in games and all this kind of stuff. They've had more heartbreak from, the 80s, 90s moving forward with getting close. Scott Norwood wide right, I think Scott Norwood. Anyway, they've had a lot of stuff happen. Thurman Thomas loses his helmet. So they've gone through hell. So if there's a fan base, and it's not so much the team, it's a fan base. I like Josh Allen fine, and he's from Firebaugh, California, which if you drive from the Bay Area to LA, you'll go through Firebaugh. And I don't know if is that the smelly part of the drive? As you get close to Fresno and all those cows on the left side, and inevitably, I don't know why you do this, but you do. Certainly your kids do. You roll down the window and all the stench comes in, but you have to moo to the cows. So that they move back to you. That's a pretty good moo. But I don't think Fireball is the stingy part of that drive. If you've never made the drive and you don't know, there's a part where it's like, I don't care if you have your windows up. I don't know if it's coming through the vents. It's just like, oh my God, there's about a, I don't know, 5-minute period or maybe less during that drive where you're just like, oh my God, it smells like hell in here. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to go Josh Allen. I'm going to go Josh Allen, the Bills, a long-suffering fan base. So if I had to root for a team, and I think this is going to happen when I sit on the couch, I would probably root for the Bills out of the AFC, and then I don't really have a team in the NFC because, as I said, I don't think the Bucs are going to be relevant. I don't think the Commanders are going to be relevant. And the teams that are really going to be teams that can win a championship are going to be the Lions, the 1 seed, the Eagles, the 2 seed. I don't think the Vikings, they've had a magical year, but I don't think it's going to be the Vikings. I wouldn't root for the Vikings. So I think it's going to be the Eagles or the Lions. If I had to choose between those, that would be difficult. I'd root for any team in the NFC except for those 2 teams. So give me your thoughts. Maybe that is your I see, this is the stuff I love. I know I'm an immature idiot. It's amazing how much piss comes out of a cow. I don't know that. I don't know that. And I actually have Dennis Allen be a great DC. I don't know how I popped that up there. I'll talk about that. No Chiefs, 12th man refs. Yeah, see, nobody's going Chiefs. You know this how. Let me hide that. All right, I don't have anything else popping up right there. Let's see. Man, I don't know if I'm a Dennis Allen guy. Alaska Outdoor. So am I wrong on that? Am I right on that? Where would you go as far as that? Because we have a bunch of locals watching the show right now, listening to the show, all those kind of things. But I know nationally, there's a lot of people listening and watching as well. So I'd love to get your thoughts. Nathan says Vikings look cooked in that last game of the year. Yep. I don't know if momentum is a thing in sports in terms of going into the playoffs. There's been teams who stunk at the end of the year and won championships. There's been teams who have awesome momentum going into the playoffs and stunk once they hit the playoffs. It works all ways. I think I've read this before or looked at this or looked at the numbers. I don't know that momentum matters, but I still, because it's the last thing we saw of the Vikings and they got smoked by the Lions on game 272 on that Sunday night game that determined the NFC, and Sam looked confused for the first time this year. Sam Darnold, he looked confused for the first time this year. They couldn't get the ball to Justin Jefferson. I give Aaron Glenn and the Lions a ton of credit, and Glenn is in the hiring cycle, the defensive coordinator of the Lions, and I think he has like 5 interviews, so I think he's going to be gone. But so that's just my thought. I'd love to get your thoughts as well. Uncle Leo says, close your windows and drive like hell through there. Yeah, it's just unavoidable. And a lot of long road trips are like that. If, that one we know, we're like, okay, it's coming up. Everybody get ready. When you're driving from San Francisco to LA, I think it's on the 5, or are you on the 5 by then? But you just know. You're just, okay, it's coming. But the worst kind is, let's say that you're not prepared for it. And you're like, you don't know, because let's say you're driving cross country or something, which I've done many times because of the damn radio industry. It's like, okay, I'm going here now. And lots of times I do it by myself because my wife's like, I'm flying. You could drive with all the junk. We got a moving truck, all that stuff. And so all of a sudden I'm driving and I'm not familiar with that drive. And all of a sudden you hit a stench and you're like, maybe your windows are down. Maybe you're driving at like, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning. And you're like, I'm just going to drive straight through. Like you're the middle of Nevada. And you've done that drive. And it's nothing. There's a prison out there in the middle of nowhere. It's all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, you have your windows open. You got your your music cranked and everything because you're tired. You're like, man, I just got to make it to the hotel tonight. And all of a sudden you hit stench and your windows down. And you're like, oh my God, it's nauseating, man. All right. There's we're starting to get some thoughts back on there. There's Mario's Rams taking it all. Oh, I didn't have that. Tribe. Good to see you. Rams taking it all. Man, that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Rams, even if we don't hate the Rams in Northern California. I could be wrong. We don't hate the Rams as much as we hate the Dodgers, clearly, or the Lakers. If you're not from up here, I think it goes in this order. You correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is pretty easy. It goes Dodgers 1, Lakers 2, Rams 3. They left for St. Louis forever. Rams 3, Kings 4. I know USC's in there too, whatever. We don't talk a lot about college football up in the Bay Area, but who said, I want to pop up the Bills. Somebody said Bills. I don't know what other team you would look at and say, yeah, they're a sentimental favorite and they're not a rivalry of the 49ers. I think the Bills are it. But anyway, that's the direction I'm going. The Rams, it's going to be tough for them because they've got to go to Arizona and take on the Vikings. But if your final impression of the Vikings was they're not very good, then I could totally understand that. That's a great point by Jacob. Let me pop this up. if the Rams win, there'll be a ton of pressure on Kyle and the reason you're bringing that up is because everyone comps Sean McVay with Kyle Shanahan. Kyle is clearly, as you well know, that I don't need to remind you, but I'll just say it, has not won a Super Bowl, and all it takes is one. So Sean McVay is a super genius, not because so much that he knows more about offense or anything than Kyle Shanahan. It's just he won that one Super Bowl, and he beat Cincinnati to do it. And too bad, because if Jaquiski Tart makes that catch, not to give you this much pain on a Friday, but if Jaquiski Tart makes that catch, that interception, it was basically a fair catch for a punt that Matthew Stafford gifted the 49ers, and they said, no, I will not take this. Then you wouldn't have to see Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl because it was Joe Burrow and the Bengals, and there was your championship, and he didn't catch the ball. Sorry to be so negative today. I'm not a negative person, but that hurt. I was at that game. And we all just went, oh, my God, are you kidding? How do you do that? How did you drop that? It was brutal, man. Now everybody's giving me stories of certain drives that I knew to avoid because it stinks. People are talking about the Seahawks. Yeah, they're not in this whole thing. Hate the Seahawks more living here, as obnoxious as Cowboy and Raider fans. That's Jacob saying that. Yeah, I've been up there. I've covered their games. They think they are just they won one Super Bowl, but like I said, that's all it takes. The Niners have won 5, and the quest for 6 has taken forever. And it's like, do you realize that we have not we? I don't have a ring. Do you realize the 49ers have 5 Super Bowls? And Seahawks fans say, well, we got the latest one. And it's like, when somebody wins a championship, maybe that's another reason I don't want the Lions to win, because once you win one, it's like you can't say I don't have any, no matter how many you have. So let me see. What else do I have on the agenda today? We've talked about football. We've talked about college football. I did talk about the Warriors briefly. One thing I wanted to bring up that is related to the Warriors, but not to last night's game. They win last night. That was a scary game because they're up big. And then Detroit, who's a better team than they've been in the past. In fact, I'll pop this up real quick, and then I want to get to something else. But let me pop this up just real quick because I have it. And if I have something, I might as well use it. I mean, I took the time to put it in and all. Let me see if I have this. Oh, there it is. Share that. There's the box score from last night's game. If you tuned in at all to hear about the Warriors, 107-104 over the Pistons. And the Pistons, look at that. Pistons are 19-19, and the Warriors are 19-18. That tells you a lot, because last year the Pistons were one of the worst teams in the league. They might have the worst record. Last night's game is impressive because look at Steph Curry. And I think I jinxed him, because yesterday I'm like, no one else can shoot on this team but Steph Curry. And then Curry goes 5 for 21 and 2 for 14 from 3. That is the famous Lund jinx. 17 points for him last night, 19 for Buddy Hield. He shows up every once in a while, but 5 from 11 from 3. But the big thing was, and this is why we talked about it before, look at the third guy down from the bench guys, Gui Santos, 4 for 6 from 3. He's Brazilian. If you didn't know him, there's no shame in that, because he saved the game last night. I mean, both Steph Curry and Draymond Green were like, this dude saved the game last night. It was amazing. So they win last night. So if you're into that, I just wanted to mention that briefly, but that's not really the reason I brought up the Warriors. I want to bring something up. Let me go to my media here. I just want to pop something up really quick. Somebody mentioned this yesterday, but I just wanted to bring it up because I'm a conspiracy theorist. There is the voting. So when the first fan returns came back, Steph Curry was number 3. He was behind Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You know that the All-Star game is in San Francisco this year, and I went on I wouldn't say a long tangent, and it certainly wasn't a rant, but I talked about this yesterday in that there's no way that Steph Curry's not starting that game. There's no way Steph Curry's not starting that game. I said it twice so you could really understand my enthusiasm here. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is still in front of it, 1.8. Steph Curry's at 1.369. You can see that. And then Luka is barely behind him. And part of the reason probably Luka is behind him, if I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, is he's been out. But I can't believe. So right now, the starting lineups would be Jokic, Durant, and LeBron. And the NBA loves that. Maybe they don't love Jokic because I love him, but they'd probably rather have Victor Wembanyama. They'd rather have Wembanyama, Durant, and James, because Wembanyama is going to be the best player in the NBA in the not too distant future, and they probably want to showcase him. So they probably like that. But my prediction is that Steph Curry is going to be number 1 amongst guards. And I'm just looking in the Western Conference. I don't know. Maybe it's, again, I could be wrong in the conspiracy theory thought, but he cannot be coming off the bench. So I just wanted to bring that up. That was one thing that I had wanted to bring up today. One other quick thing that I wanted to show you from a baseball sense. We're not going to get deep into baseball because there's not a lot of stories, and as we talked about a lot, we don't have to talk about anything we don't talk about. But on the chalkboard, which I brought back by popular demand today on the right side of your screen, episode 29. One of the things in there that I have is odds. You see near the third from the bottom there, Hanson's, Caboose, third thing from the bottom there is odds. And what that means is, look at this. Now, maybe this means absolutely, positively nothing, but I know I have a lot of Giants fans that tune in, so we'll hit the Giants a little bit. But if you look right there, now I could be wrong, but this is not just random people. This is not just some weird poll. This was a poll amongst general managers and front office types in Major League Baseball, most likely to sign Roki Sasaki. The Dodgers still, maybe this is now that I look at it, maybe this is a negative poll, but I took it as positive. So the Dodgers at 44.4%, as you can see, a lot of people thought that was a done deal. So maybe that's dropping a bit. The Padres, which you don't hate as much as the Dodgers, but still, that wouldn't be great. And they need him more. Their rotation is not great. Michael King is really, really good. They still have Dylan Cease, which there's rumors that he may be moved. But the rest of their rotation is not great. Yu Darvish is their 3 starter, and then they have I don't knows. So Roki Sasaki, I think, would actually make a bigger impact in San Diego than he would in LA because they're stacked. Like, what? You need more frosting on the cake? Like, you got 3 pounds of frosting on that cake. Do you need more, Dodgers? No, you don't. But I'm as weird as this sounds, and maybe I'm interpreting this 100% wrong, and so you can tell me on the chat line if I'm wrong on this, or at John Lund Radio on Twitter, Instagram, all those different places. If you're watching on that forum, thank you very much. 8.9%, it says right there, right in front of your face, that the Giants are in this thing because they were kind of a fringe team in this whole Roki Sasaki thing, and they need Roki Sasaki more than the Padres, more than the Dodgers. We've talked about it. The addition of Justin Verlander is fine, but as I'm reading more about Justin Verlander, I don't know what, from a fan standpoint, what you think of Justin Verlander, but more and more everybody's realizing what I said the first time was, look, you're taking a flyer on him. This is not somebody you 10 years ago. This isn't the 2012 season in the World Series, the Tigers versus the Giants. This is not that. This is a guy that you're giving $15 million to, which I think is still a lot of money because it could prohibit them from spending a lot of money, but it would make sense if Verlander was in, so Webb would be your 1, Sasaki would be your 2, Robbie Ray would be your 3, still coming back from Tommy John. Then Verlander could slot in as a 4, which is fine. And what your 4 means in a rotation is sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not. And then your 5 is a complete unknown or a flyer, or, you're going to have in the 5 spot, you're going to have a bunch of guys. You might have 10 different guys start a game. And especially in the bullpen era that we have, or the bullpen starter in the era that we have, you might even have more than that. So Sasaki gives you optimism because he could slot in at the 2 at 23 years old, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, and he doesn't cost you a ton of money. So the $15 million that you gave to Justin Verlander, which I think would prohibit you from going out and getting Sonny Gray, who's got a backloaded contract with the Cardinals. I think Sonny Gray is going to make like $35 million this year. So if you go $35 million for Sonny Gray, who would be a great number 2 starter and knows the Bay Area, having been with the A's. So he's gonna make $35 million, and you gave Justin Verlander 15, so that's $50 million between those 2 pitchers, and I just don't think the Giants are going to do that. So if they were to get Roki Sasaki, who's not going to cost very much, we've gone over that, so don't worry. But anyway, I would think that would be amazing. So I took that as a positive at 8.9%. You may have looked at it and said, "Are you insane, Lund? The Dodgers were at 44.4, and the Padres are like 26%. The 8.9%." I think it's better than nothing. I took it as a positive. You might say that I'm absolutely insane. I took that as positive. I could, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe that isn't a positive. Maybe that's dumb on my part. It could be. Who do we have here? Just checking the chat line real quick. Because sometimes I bring up baseball and I think to yourself, look, man, Lund, it's the NFL playoffs. The Notre Dame was last night against Penn State, which we've talked about. So if you missed it, go back, rewatch the show. Awesome. And I told you the Rocco Spindler story, and I think that ball was touched by God, that the Notre Dame kicker kicked through it, just went. So you can go back through that. We don't need to do that again. What else do we have? Anything on baseball? Stripper polls. I might do the stripper voice. That's somebody who knows. What else do we have? Anything on baseball? Anybody? Did I interpret that wrong? So anyway, we can go with that. Let me make sure that I do have a sweet, clean, family-friendly caboose pistol story for you today. And it's actually, we're about an hour 50 into this thing, and I'm having a good time, and I don't want to stop. But did I mention anything? Oh, I've got one other thing on the Giants, and then we're going to do a caboose pistol in which I need your help. So don't go anywhere because I need you. I need you. Let me share my screen with you one more time. Because this just happened like right before the show. And I thought, if we're going to talk Giants, and I knew I was going to bring up Sasaki's odds and say that was a positive, but let me share this with you too, if you're a Giants fan. So you see that right there? That is Jim Bowden. And who the hell is Jim Bowden? You might be asking yourself. He's on SiriusXM, the MLB channel, which also our good friend Kevin Friendsen is on. And I need to have him on here shortly to talk some baseball maybe after the Super Bowl and all the stuff that's going on. But we do have to get him on at some point. Great guy. So this is Jim Bowden, who used to be the general manager of the Reds and the Nationals. You probably know him. He writes for The Athletic as well, and he's on MLB, Sirius MLB radio, or whatever they call it. So he's giving out grades for the offseason so far, and I think he's being generous, to be completely honest. But I could be wrong. How would you grade the Giants offseason? He's given them a B. Willie Adames, as we know, at 7 years, $182 million. That's an A to me. And Justin Verlander at 1 year, $15 million. I might call that a B minus, because $15 million could prohibit you if you're the Giants, because they don't spend a ton of money, even though they're a major market team. They spend an okay amount, but don't be fooled. They're not going to spend like the Dodgers or the Yankees. I've told you this before. I think they're more like the Red Sox. You know, they are a major market team, but they don't always, I should say, spend like that. So he says it's a B offseason. Those aren't bad signings. I'm going to say A for Willie Adames, B minus for Justin Verlander, because he's not costing you a ton. He could surprise us. But as he points it out, I'm not going to go through the key takeaways because that's just whatever. He mentions Pete Alonso. He mentions all this thing. You can see it. I'm not going to read through it. At the bottom, it says Kirby Yates and Tanner Scott, relievers. I'd love for them to get Tanner Scott, especially if they're going to put Jordan Hicks in the rotation. I think Jordan Hicks in the 7th inning, Duvall in the 8th inning, Walker in the 9th inning would be absolutely great. But if you want to put Tanner Scott, he was awesome, dude. He went to the Padres. He went from... Who was he with before? Oh, he's with Florida. He was with the Marlins, not Florida, Miami. He was at the Miami Marlins, so he probably didn't know much about him. Then he went to the Padres, and Tanner Scott is really good. So I would love it if the Giants got Tanner Scott. Plus, the one thing, and I say this every year about Major League Baseball, I'm not going to say easy because nothing in sports is easy. Professional sports is not easy in any way, shape, or form. But building a bullpen is one of the easier things of a difficult sport, if that makes sense. Nothing is easy, but teams don't build a bullpen in the offseason in the way that they should. During the season, they do. During the season, they go, we're going into the playoffs. Let's get a bunch of hammer arms because nobody goes far anymore. Everybody goes 5 and fly. So all of a sudden they go, you know what you really need in the playoffs is a bullpen. Well, no kidding. That would be great during the season too. So I'd love it for Tanner Scott. Plus, you're not paying what you're paying for starting pitching. Like if you want to complain about the Justin Verlander signing, Tanner Scott isn't going to make $15 million this year. He might make 10 or 12. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's going to make a ton and relievers are more in demand, but he hasn't signed yet, which lets you believe that he doesn't like what the market is giving him, so he'll wait. But Tanner Scott's probably, I don't know, $10, $12 million. So he could be a hammer. And if you're going to go with Jordan Hicks in the rotation, Tanner Scott could be your 7th inning guy, and he just shuts the door. He might be your 8th. He might be your closer at some point. He could do it all. So if you had Tanner Scott, Duvall, and Walker the way he pitched last year, you're going to play a 6th inning game every night. That's pretty good. And he would have been less than Justin Verlander. So I guess if you want to complain about Verlander, there you go. But let me go down to the biggest question that Jim Bowden had, which is, will they add a power bat for the middle of their lineup? Prediction, 4th place. He's not wrong because the Dodgers are going to win the thing. I'm sorry. And Arizona just got Burns, and they're pretty good and athletic. And then the Padres are the Padres. I don't know if they're going to get Sasaki, but they've got sticks in the lineup much better than what the Giants do. So 4th place, that's fair. It's depressing, but it's still fair. So the big question, obviously, in this whole thing is, will they add a power bat? I think that's the one thing, and you and I have talked about it. Pete Alonso would be absolutely great. Let me get that out of my way. Pete Alonso would be absolutely great, but the problem is I just don't think they're going to come to a conclusion with him. Go back to some of the older shows. We've talked about it at length. A 1-year deal for Pete Alonso with the Giants, that would be great for the Giants, and you'd be excited, but Pete Alonso doing a prove-it deal at Oracle Park, where it's difficult to hit home runs, not so much for him, but that would be his thought process, and Scott Boras would probably steer him away from that. because he wants to have a 50 home run year and play for a really good team and maximize his value and then go back out on the market next year and get a long-term big deal. Would that happen with the Giants? They're probably going to be a fourth place team. Hopefully they're not, but they look like a fourth place team at this point. And he's not going to hit the amount of home runs at Oracle Park that he would hit somewhere else. So I don't see it, but I could be wrong. As I say, I often am. All right, as we come up on 2 hours, I'm going to check the lines one more time, but let me, one thing I have not gotten to, and let me double check on the chalkboard. I have not gotten, by the way, I've gotten zero feedback on bringing the chalkboard back. I do this for you. I'm not angry. But I do this for you because a bunch of people hit me up both on social media and here in the chat room and said, hey, where's the chalkboard, bro? I know that you changed your setup and all these kind of things. You changed a little bit of what you're doing. You brought in a new operating system. All good. We're not having any glitches anymore, which is awesome because I lost sleep over glitches. I was so pissed about the glitches that we were having on the show, especially yesterday when I'd set all this stuff up and I was upset. So I'm like, man, we can't have glitches anymore. We're not doing glitches. All right. We're not doing glitches. So 2 things that I have for you. Let me make sure I loaded the one because I didn't. I'm going to be really angry with myself. Did I load that? Oh yeah, I do. I have it. All right, great. So I think I've gotten to everything. I'm double checking, but anyway, I'm talking about the chalkboard here and I want more feedback on the chalkboard because I brought it back for you because I had it on the old setup and then I didn't have it. And then a bunch of people hit me up both on the chat and on social media at John Lund Radio and said, hey, man, I like following along on the chalkboard, even though you jump around like a maniac for the entire show. Could you please bring back the chalkboard? Because if I go somewhere and then I bounce back, and what I'm trying to do is do that in order, but I've done a really terrible job of it today. Like Saleh was supposed to be first. Would Jake make the kick? 49ers fixed. The reason I said 49ers fixed is not they're fixed, is that I fixed those videos and we played them earlier. Tom Brady running the Raiders, playoffs, who you rooting for, who you not. That's what that means. Oh, yeah, rooting. Okay, I knew I would get to it. Because earlier I said, what the hell does root mean? I forgot. Who are you rooting for in the playoffs? What that means. The Notre Dame story is the one I said about Rocco Spindler, the offensive lineman that was in the front of everything, is on every picture, was a guy, his son that's the same age as my son, that is a front and center for Notre Dame. College football, we got into all that conversations, and plus the Drew Rosenhaus thing he said about NIL. Odds is Roki Sasaki. Hanson's is where I'm going to be tomorrow. Hanson's of Sonoma, and we're going to be drinking some vodka. I'd love for you to join us there. I'll be there up in Sonoma at about 1 o'clock tomorrow, and I'd love to see you and have a cocktail, and we can cheers to the weekend or whatever else is on your mind. And then the Caboose Pistol is where we are now. Okay? So we're good. Anything else before I play the Caboose Pistol? Because if you're new to the show, and we're adding to the community every day, which I absolutely love. And thank you so much. If I have not acknowledged you and you're new to the show, I apologize. I'll get to it. And we have all our regulars in today for a Friday, which is awesome. I love all you people. So we're at the Caboose Pistol part of the show, which means after I play this, we'll probably go. And you can be on with your day and be productive and everything else. So anything else I have missed that you would like to talk about? I do get enthused when you say you do like the tangents. You say, I like John's tangents, though, with somebody not liking them. And again, feedback. If you don't like them and you don't like the ADD stuff that I do, I'll try to be better at it and I'll take more medication. Let's see what else we got. Okay. Chalkboard. Oh, my fault. A lot of people came through. Chalkboard, yes, says Joe P. Joy P. says chalkboard, yes. Okay. That's all I need to hear because she is one of the most influential people in here. And if she likes it, then sorry, man. You guys are all, the rest of you are screwed. Pine Needle says, that's a great avatar. Is John, earlier everybody praised the chalkboard. Oh, I did. Did I not see it? I've told you this before and it's not an excuse. It isn't. I got to be better. But I'm getting used to the new chat line, whereas before the chat line kind of moved slow and I could see everything. And now it's just like, it's moving at warp speed now. And so sometimes I may miss some things. That's a bad excuse. I got to get better. You're 100% right on that. If that's your thought, I got to get better. Alaska Outdoor answers the question today. Today's reoccurring theme, which is who you rooting for in the playoffs. Now that the Niners are not around, he says, let's go Detroit Lions. Okay. I'm torn on the Lions. They have the same thing that the Bills have, which is that sentimental feeling that they've never won. They've never even gone to a Super Bowl, let alone won one. So I can see the sentimental value, but they've become, now that they're relevant, like they've never been they've never been relevant to the 49ers up until the last 2 years. Like we never talked about the Lions. That's the thing, is to be hated. You know this, but I'll reiterate it for you before we get to the caboose pistol. To be hated in any walk of life. This is not a sports issue. I love going off the field and off the ice and off the court and all these kind of things because they're kind of life philosophies. You don't hate anybody who's not competitive. Like if somebody's just kind of sitting in the corner doing nothing, you're like, that's not a threat to me in any walk of life. That's not a threat to me. I'm not worried about that person. The minute they become a threat to you, like there's a guy on, I don't know, he works for another company and he's selling the same thing you're selling, it's basically sprockets, and he's selling all these things and he's becoming a pain in the ass to you. Like I'm not selling as many as I used to because that damn guy, Bob Johnson over there, is getting all the business. I hate Bob Johnson. Well, 2 years ago when he was, an intern or something, he wasn't relevant to you, but now he's a pain in the ass to you. And he's taking money out of your pocket. And he's taking food off your table. And you're like, bro, I don't like that guy. I don't like him at all. You saw him at the bar or something. He's buying all the drinks because he's, he stole some account from you. And you're like, I hate that guy. Well, you didn't used to. That's the same thing in sports. Like the Lions I never talked about the Lions unless I lived there. And it was pathetic. Millen Man March, 0-16, all that stuff. I told you about it. We don't need to cover that ground again, but they weren't relevant. We didn't talk about them. And all of a sudden it's like, I hate the Lions. And I don't hate them. And I understand why there's sentimental value, but because we're in San Francisco, we're in the Bay Area, a lot of us listening and watching today, I'd much rather pull for the Bills and the sentimentality of the Bills. Is that a word? Sentimentality? The sentimentality of the Bills than I would the Lions, because the Lions are a threat to the 49ers. Therefore, I have to hate the Lions now, even though I didn't used to think they were relevant. Make sense? Yes. All right. I think I apologize before I get to the caboose pistol. You're right. I'm wrong. You're smart. I'm dumb. A lot of people talked about the chalkboard and I just didn't see it. So that's on me. 100% on me. And I apologize. All right. Let me play this for you. And if you're local, or I know we have a lot of listenership and viewership in Sacramento. So I'm always weary because sometimes on the internet, you don't know what's real and fake. You don't know so this could be easily some sort of, and let me see, I think I have something different. Let's see. I don't think I put that on there. So what I'm going to play for you, I'm going to play the fancy open for this first, but what I'm going to play for you is a guy up in Sacramento. And apparently they go back to him to talk about the Antonio Pierce firing. And they do this in news all the time. Like here's the news anchor at the desk, right? Hello, welcome to the 9 o'clock news. I'm talking like a news anchor. And so you go to the news anchor, he tells you the news. And then sometimes they go to a shot like in a back room or something, like where a guy might be sitting at a desk, and they split the screen and they have this guy talking about something. And they do that with reporters, but it's kind of become a thing on news that they just go to the back. I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of credibility there, but I'm going to play this, and either you tell me, because maybe you know this because it was up in Sacramento, either this is some kind of an internet ruse because it would be really easy to put this image behind the guy. So I don't want to I'm not calling the guy out. I think it's funny, but I don't want to be selling this story or saying this is true if it is not true, because it might not be. It might just be an internet ruse because this would be really easy to do. So let me play the open and then we'll get to this. Big poll. Let's see. Caboose pistol. Here we go. If you're new to the show, we always end the show with caboose pistol. I think this is a pretty good one, but I'm going to need your help with this one today.
John Lund Unleashed brings you the caboose pistol.
A female officer noticed the handle of a revolver sticking out from inside the woman.
What is the caboose pistol?
Did you say caboose pistol?
The old caboose pistol, everybody has one.
What better way to end the show than with a what the fuck was that?
Wedged in the crack of her buttocks.
What?
Good. I know someone who could hide a machine gun in there. Yeah. I'm sorry, we're getting off track.
Just take it away, Lund, and leave me out of this, you weirdo.
We say this all the time. I am not a weirdo. I'm just reporting the news. Do not take shots at them. I'm just reporting the news. It's not on me. This is not on me. All the weird stories that we see. Now, this is not so much a weird story as much as it is. Boy, that ended abruptly. As much as it is, I'm asking you the question because maybe you know this. Maybe you know this. I don't. Maybe this was an internet ruse, because lots of times I've been fooled plenty of times. There are fake accounts out there, but I don't know why people get off on this stuff, but they do stuff and then it goes viral and it makes them feel better about themselves. It's fine. It's the day and age that we live in now. So I don't know if this is real or fake. I don't know if this person has addressed this, whatever the case may be. I don't think it's a big deal, but it's just kind of funny, I guess is what it is. So watch this. This is up in Sacramento. And I did look this guy up. So this guy's a legitimate guy. He's up in Sacramento. And ironically enough, I tell you this every day, so you're probably sick of it. My son goes to Arizona State, and apparently this guy did as well at the Cronkite Broadcast School. So tell me if this is real or not. Have you heard about this? Maybe this is new to you, or maybe because it's in Northern California, and it's a fake. So I don't want to rip on this guy. And I'm not going to rip on him, but maybe this is wrong. So here you go.
Would be coming back, Jake.
Well, he thought so yesterday when he talked to the media. He hadn't been told otherwise. This was kind of building, Tony, over the past couple of weeks. He had such a great start to last season, taking over midway through the year, I think ending the year 5-4, beating the Rails off of the Chargers in the final game, 68-28. There was a ton of momentum heading into this season. And then it kind of all collapsed. Specifically, though, I would say a lot has to do with roster construction. They just didn't have a quarterback for the majority of the year. Gardner Minshew was not the answer. Aiden O'Connell got hurt, played well at the end of the year. But it looked like... All
right, so that is Jacob up in Sacramento. I know his last name, and I think I might have this up on my... let me share my screen and see if I have this up. Because I looked him up, and he definitely is... This is a legit guy. I don't have him on my screen. Okay, I thought I might have put him up on my screen earlier so that I could show you his profile. But on Twitter, that's a real guy. And did somebody is that photoshopped? Let me play this one more time. And I'm going to cut this off early, but it's a picture. It looks like Rihanna. I think it's Rihanna. So either he was back there and he forgot to close the window, which I find to be impossible to believe. Like there's no way that this guy had this window up of Rihanna, and then they pop back into the studio or the area or whatever you want to call it, backstage or at his desk or his cubicle or whatever, and he forgot to close it. And then I'll say, because here's the other thing that I think would happen. I'm versed in TV a little bit. I've done TV in my life, not lots, but quite a bit. And I know that like if the producers saw that, they're behind the scenes. Cut to camera 3, cut to camera 5. Oh my God, that's Rihanna. That's nudity. He's looking at porn. Please, they would cut there. They would edit the camera. They would do something. They would just go to his face, and they didn't. So I'm thinking that this is fake. I could be wrong. This happened up in Sacramento. Apparently, this is a real guy. But did this really happen, or is this a fake?
Would be coming back, Jake.
Well, he thought so yesterday when he talked to the media. He hadn't been told otherwise. This was kind of building, Tony, over the past couple of weeks. He had such a great start to last season.
So is that real? I think it's fake, because I think somebody behind the scenes would be screaming and yelling that Jake's looking at porn. In that case, it's not porn. It's just Rihanna. It looked like he was like on an Instagram page or something. And so I'm thinking to myself, there's no way. Like that's an internet fake. Does anybody know about this? Am I being stupid? Am I being fooled on this whole thing? I'm not necessarily being fooled, because I put it in there so I could ask you that question, because I don't think so. The sports fan goes right to Joy Taylor. Of course you do. That story, man, unbelievable. Anyway, so what do you think? Because I just don't think. There you go. See, I knew we would do this. How long until HR was called? I think it's a fake. I think it's a fake, because they would have helped him out, unless people didn't like Jake in the building, and Jacob, I think his name is. Unless people didn't like him, and then people would be like, hey, keep that on there, man. I don't like that guy. He's a jerk to me. He's an on-air guy. And sometimes that happens. Like behind-the-scene guys are resentful of the guys in front of the camera. If I just got my shot, I could do that better than him. I'm going to keep that on there. He's looking at Rihanna. Fire that guy. That's not a fireable offense. No, that was not Joy. I'm having a problem with Joe and Joy today. What is wrong with me? That is not Joy Taylor. But anyway, I thought it was really interesting, because I'm like, that's got to be a fake. So I got to get to the bottom of that. And if you could help me with that, at John Lund Radio on all my social medias, especially Twitter, or you can hit me up here in the comment line. Has anybody heard about that? Did that really happen, or am I just being fooled? I think I'm being fooled. Pine Needle says, the guy is a legitimate reporter, so I can tell you as far as he looks exactly like a guy that would be staring at. Thank you very much. I don't know. There you go, man. I'm with you. No way. It was too obvious, and there's just no way that guy would be sitting backstage or wherever at his cubicle going, okay, I'm on in 3, 2, 1, and he wouldn't look around him and go, do I have anything going here? And I don't think I don't consider it. Now we're getting into a moral dilemma, and I'm terrible at these. don't take advice from me when it comes to moral issues, and that's just going to be a thing moving forward. And I might try to say, hey, take my advice on this, and this is just a something you should have in the back of your mind. As far as morals are concerned, I am not, as Charles Barkley once famously said, I am not a role model. I am not a role model. So it doesn't bother me. And if I was the news director or the powers that be, I wouldn't be upset with this guy whatsoever. You're doing what you're doing. It's Rihanna. Maybe you're doing research. I don't know. Whatever the case may be. And when we're in this business, like when I was in radio for years, I was looking at weird websites for content. I swear to you, I was looking at them for content. Now I wasn't going straight to, Pornhub. I wasn't doing that. But I mean, there were sites that probably, and I don't even know if, the tech guys behind the scenes do this, that would go, by the way, in the studio, did you see the stuff Lund was looking at? That might be a fireable offense, but a lot of times it was like caboose pistol stuff that I was looking for, so I could explain that away. I don't know how a sports guy could explain Rihanna away and why you're doing that on the company computer, but I don't think it's real. I think it's a fake. Let me go here. Keep reading, John. I just checked. It's real. CBS 13. Did he really do that? He must be a young guy. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not porn. Might have been research. I don't know. I don't know. But if you say it, I believe it. And I'll do some more. I'll do some more of this kind of stuff. But it's just interesting. I want to put Steve's comment up there because he's angry with me. And I'm all for, God, this thing is moving fast. I got to catch him. When did Sports Bot become porn talk? Steve, I'm not making it about porn, but I do the caboose pistol at the end of the show. And I just thought it was interesting. I thought that was an interesting thing. I'm in this industry. And again, you don't have to like it. I'm just, not everything I do, people are going to like. And I'm totally fine with it. We've been going 2 hours and 12 minutes. I think I've stayed on focus pretty good for a Friday. I am in no means upset or disagree with you. I just do things and not everybody loves what I do. And I completely understand it. And I appreciate you coming in. And I appreciate you saying that on the chat line that you don't do that you don't like it. And as I said before, because the show goes in a circle a lot of times, not in a negative sense, but not everybody's going to agree what we do. And if a bunch of people say that, I said this earlier on in the show, if a bunch of people go, dude, I don't want that porn stuff. What's wrong with you? Then if enough people say it, I'll stop doing it. We've done the caboose pistol for probably, Pop and I did it since 2012, probably. So I've been doing it 12 years. And a lot of people like it. If you don't like it, enough people say they don't like it, then I won't do it. I mean, that's just how I am. It's majority rules. If one person says it, I still think it's okay. If 20 people come to me and say, I'm not down, then we're not going to do it anymore. That's just the way it is. So I'm not mad at you, and I appreciate you giving me a differing opinion on it. And I hope that that's getting through and permeating to people, that I'm not sitting here thinking, you know what, I'm doing caboose pistol. I'm going to bring this stuff up, and if you don't like it, suck it. Like that's not me. I'm not going to say that. So anyway, love the feedback on that story. All right, are we finished today? I want you to have a productive Friday. I want to leave you with, let me double check that we made everything. We did the caboose. We did Sasaki. We did Giants offseason grades. Santos briefly. Warriors win. Drew Rosenhaus. If you missed anything, by the way, you can go back on YouTube, which I would suggest if you missed anything, because you're like, why didn't you talk solid? Why didn't you talk Niners? We talked all about all that stuff. We talked about would Jake Moody have made that kick that the Notre Dame kicker made. The only thing I didn't give you, in fact, I have one more thing. I know I keep saying this and you want to go. You're like, dude, I got stuff to do. Could you quit? Let me give you one more thing, just because I put this in my videos today. And I do want to ask you one more question. I love how the show turns in terms of me asking you, because this is fascinating to me, and you may not think it is, but I love asking you the question and getting your thoughts on all these kind of things. So one thing I didn't play from college last night. So I played the kicker. I played, what was the other thing we played? Because I thought that I played Drew Rosenhaus. We got into that conversation. Let me play this, because Kirk Herbstreet over the years, at least this is how I perceive him. Maybe you don't. But Kirk Herbstreet has kind of been the kind of clean as the driven snow kind of a guy, nice guy, clean cut. Everybody likes him. He's not going to create too many waves, controversy. But over the last couple of months, if you've paid attention, maybe you haven't. Maybe you're above this kind of stuff, above the fray, above fights on Twitter and Twitter wars and Twitter beefs and all this kind of stuff. But he and Shannon Sharp got into it because he said a few things, and he's getting a little spicy. And I don't know, maybe it's him getting older and cranky or whatever. But and he's on Thursday Night Football with Al Michaels, and Al's a little bit cranky, and Al will say whatever's on his mind that happens as you get older. Like my mom, no filter. Earlier in her life, bit of a filter. But I mean, if people get older, and I think they just think, you know what? I don't care. Like, I'm retired. I'm getting my money. I don't need anybody's approval. I don't need to be popular. I don't know. As you get older in life, like when you're in high school or something, I got to be popular. College, got to be like you want lots of friends. And then as you get older, like I'd like about 2 really good friends. And I don't care what anybody says. And you get older and you say to yourself, I just don't care if I'm just going to give my opinion. That's kind of, I don't know. I've just noticed that. So maybe that's where Herbstreet is going, even though he doesn't look older. Maybe that's docs, maybe that's natural, whatever the case may be. He still looks great. He doesn't look much older than the day that he debuted on ESPN. But he's spicy. And remember, they are on cable, but having worked for ESPN, this is how I'm going to set this up. Having worked for ESPN for about 10 years myself, they're owned by Mickey Mouse. Hi, everybody, it's Mickey. And I've told you this story before, but for the sake of new people in the room and listening and watching, I both was a program director in Dallas for ESPN 103.3 FM in Dallas, and I also was an on-air talent for ESPN in a number of places. I also was the program director of ESPN 1250 in Pittsburgh, and both those stations were owned directly, what they call an O&O, an owned and operated station, directly owned by ESPN. So I worked for them for a number of different years in a number of different places. I've done shows nationally for ESPN Radio, a number of shows. I've told you for a summer, I actually moved up to Bristol and did Game Night, which is a really hard show to do, but did Game Night for a summer. And so all those kind of things. So I know ESPN, and they're owned by Disney. So that's kind of the backdrop on these things. He's on cable, so he can say generally, especially after a certain time, whatever he wants. But this is Kirk Herbstreet, and he's getting a little spicier. Here it is.
But, bro, here's the thing. The perception is wrong with Ohio State. The perception is they went out and found players. The reality is this is a veteran defense. And you know what it's like when you have a 3- and 4-year guys that have been there forever, won a lot of great games, lost a lot to Michigan, lost to Oregon, lost to Georgia. It's a hardened team that's been through a lot of shit, and I think.
So, look, it's not like it offends me. I'm very difficult to offend. Some people in our country are looking to be offended, right? That's just the era that we're living through. Is everybody's looking to be offended rather than just like, whatever, it doesn't affect me. I'm not pissed off. And there are reasons to be offended. And that's why I think that it's too bad when people are for things that I don't think are that way. And again, I'm not a really good moral compass. I will give you that 100%. If you think I'm a bad moral compass, you would never let me date your daughter. When I was younger, of course, those kind of things. I don't disagree with you at all. I am not a role model. So I'm not offended by what Kirk Herbstreet said there. I was just a little bit surprised because he's always been, and I use this on all of my shows. There are people, and this is why shows work. You have to have chemistry, but you also have somebody who's wild and over here, like a Pat McAfee, for example, on that set. And then you got a guy who's more of the moral compass. So you got to have everybody on the set. This works in radio. This works in TV. And the point is, having done TV, having done radio, no producers, no directors, all these kind of things, they want a little bit of everybody on that stage, on that board, on that pre-post game show. And the reason they do, and the same thing with the radio show, the reason they want that is because people look at it and say, who can I most relate to? I mean, that's and maybe that's wrong, but that's kind of the thought process in TV and radio and in this form as well on YouTube and all the platforms that we're on, stages that we're on right now. Even though I'm a solo blabbing idiot a lot of the time, when you have a multi-person situation, they want someone on that board, and let's just call it, because we were just talking about it, with Kirk Herbstreet. So you got Desmond Howard on one end. He's the former player, and everybody knows him. He's a Heisman Trophy winner, former first-round pick. A lot of people know him. You got the host of the show. So that's kind of the guy who's, he's the point guard keeping everything going. You got Nick Saban, the former coach. He's really outspoken, become really outspoken. So you got somebody, and he's an older guy, an older demo can relate to him. You got Pat McAfee on there in the dead center. And there's a reason why he's sitting dead center, because he's really popular right now, especially with the younger demographic. So Pat McAfee's on there. He's the wild, crazy guy. He's going to say crazy stuff. They want him on there because it's like, whoa, what's Pat McAfee going to say? He's the wild and crazy guy. And then you got Kirk Herbstreet on the end, and he's supposed to be kind of the moral compass of the show. That's what Kirk is. A lot of people can relate to him. He's kind of conservative, or has been conservative through the years. He's not going to do something wild and crazy. He's not going to say shit on the air. He's not going to say, bro. Like, I don't know. maybe because he got into the Twitter beef with Shannon Sharp. Maybe it's because he's older. Maybe it's none of the above. Maybe I'm 100% wrong. But I just thought it was really interesting just knowing the background of those kind of shows and going, okay, which one are you? Because people want to relate to that. Now, one of the best shows going in sports is Inside the NBA, and all those guys are crazy. Like Shaq is crazy, Charles is crazy, but then you got Kenny Smith. Does Kenny Smith do crazy things? No, they have fun, but Kenny Smith is not going to do what Shaq does. Kenny Smith is not going to do what Charles does. So that's what I'm saying. Everybody plays a different role. EJ is the straight guy. Ernie Johnson's the straight guy. That show works. You got two crazy guys opposite each other. And again, they're sitting opposite each other for a reason. There is a method to all this madness. So they're sitting opposite of each other so that, it's this. And then Kenny's sitting next to Charles because the craziest guy is sitting next to the conservative guy. And then EJ is point guarding things, and he's conservative as well. So there's a method to the madness and why it works. And if you look at a show, and hopefully this is educational to a certain extent. So if you look at a show and you think to yourself, it's not working, there's a reason why it's not working because you just don't have the right guys. And so like ESPN, their NBA coverage, for example, I think Bob Myers is great. And the reason why they hired Bob Myers is because Screaming A is on one end, and he's outrageous, supposedly. And Kendrick Perkins is on the other, and he's outrageous, supposedly. I don't love those guys, but that's the thought process. They're not Charles and Shaq. They're trying to get Charles and Shaq with Stephen A. and Kendrick Perkins, but that doesn't work. I don't know why. It just doesn't. And then Bob Myers is kind of the conservative guy, front office guy, knows the NBA, but you can tell just on his face, and I know Bob a little bit, Bob just gets frustrated. It's like, oh my God, do these guys know how this league works at all? Ugh, why am I here? They're probably paying him pretty well. And then Michael Wilbon will join. He's a little bit conservative. He's the media member. He's going to tell you from an insider's perspective what he thinks. And then Malika Andrews, who is awesome, Bay Area zone from Oakland. And then Malika Andrews is in there. And Malika Andrews is going to be the straight person, right? She's going to point guard the whole thing, and she does an awesome job. I was going to say she has a bright future ahead of her. She's bright right now. So anyway, that's how shows work. And off of that Kirk Herbstreet thing, so can I play this one more time? Just because if you just joined, you're going to be confused. So again, with that knowledge as the backdrop, and look at the guys on the stage. I'm just telling you, everybody has a role on the stage, and this is not normally Kirk Herbstreet.
But, bro, here's the thing. The perception is wrong with Ohio State. The perception is they went out and found players. The reality is this is a veteran defense and you know what it's like when you have a 3- and 4-year guys that have been there forever, won a lot of great games, lost a lot to Michigan, lost to Oregon, lost to Georgia. It's a hardened team that's been through a lot of shit, and I think.
See, and again, I don't know that I've even heard anybody outside of Pat McAfee who has carte blanche on ESPN right now. Maybe not as much as Screaming A, but a lot. And he says those things, and he'll drop F-bombs and everything, but it's almost like I say this all the time. Well, Charles Barkley can get away with more than the average person. And the reason why is because there's a saying out there, I don't know if you ever use it, but certainly within media circles they do, and I do. Well, that's Charles being Charles, right? Charles Barkley has established that he's going to say whatever he wants. And so when Charles Barkley says something, you're not shocked at all. It's like, that's Charles being Charles. If Kenny on Inside the NBA, if Kenny Smith acted like Charles Barkley, even on occasion, you'd be like, bro, whoa, stay in your lane. That's not what you do, right? As a viewer, you'd be like, that's not what you do. And so I guess that's why I'm playing that, because McAfee's in the middle of that. And if McAfee says shit or whatever, or bro, maybe it's from McAfee rubbing off on Herbstreet, and Herbstreet doesn't like the fact that McAfee's getting more love than he is, because he used to be and he is still the star on that show, but it's like everybody's talking about McAfee. So maybe he's trying to get some of that. I have no idea, or maybe I'm just overthinking this whole thing. But that's not what Kirk Herbstreet does. He's not outrageous, and he doesn't say shit. And nobody even nobody on the panel even really blinked an eye. So maybe that's just the way things are going. I don't know. But to me, College Football Game Day was the show for years and years, and still is. It's really good. Lee Corso's not there anymore, and he was great. He would put the head on, and it was always fun, and then college football would start in the morning. And it's still a really good show. Lee Corso has gotten older, and I don't know if you saw, he fell on the stage, and it's like, oh, man, it sucks. It sucks to get older. It stinks to see him get older, but still, they have survived without him, even though he was an integral member of that show. And for a long time, that was the best sports show as far as pre and post game and all that kind of stuff and analysis that you had. But Kirk Herbstreet was always the conservative guy that had all the information and all that kind of stuff, and he looked good, and so that was his role. So maybe I'm overthinking that whole thing. But that was interesting to me, and I almost didn't play it. But I wanted to double-check everything. All right, we're 2 hours and 25 minutes into this thing. I want you to go enjoy your Friday. I do not want you to sit here all day and feel like you've got to be here, and I'm glad that you are. And again, if you are here, you can either watch on YouTube and make sure that you subscribe and like and tell all your friends and enemies. We stream every day on Instagram at John Lund Radio, so you can check us out there. And we also stream on X at John Lund Radio, and we have a podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. So you can take us with you right after the show. I'm going to hit a button. It's going to go right onto the podcast. If you're looking now, it's not there, today's episode, but it will be momentarily. So if you want to go somewhere, or you want to put some headphones on, or you want to go to the gym or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. You know what a podcast is. You don't need me to explain what that is. And then one last time, I just want to tell you this because we're going to be up there. Let me pop this up one more time on the screen for you. We are going to be up at Hanson's in Sonoma, Hanson's Vodka. Very, very cool. Let me just switch off. I know the chalkboard's going to go away. I apologize. But there it is, Hanson's Vodka. There is the espresso vodka that I highly recommend. They got the grapefruit, habanero, mandarin orange, Meyer lemon, all this kind of stuff. They have an original vodka, obviously, too. Not everything is infused, but it's a great spot up in Sonoma, especially if you're going up this weekend and you're like, I'm wined out or champagned out or whatever. They have a tasting room, the whole thing. They make all these killer cocktails depending on the season. It's a great spot to go. So if you're up there, awesome. I'll be up there about 1 o'clock in Sonoma, and it's called Hanson's, and it's just a really cool spot to go. So would love to see you up there, and it'd be fun. We have a drink, we hang out, you talk about the show, you tell me what you like, what you don't, get all that feedback and everything else. So I think that will do it for the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. It means the world to me, and I'm not just saying that. It means the world to me that you would hang out for a little while, and hopefully we can brighten your day and we can have a good time, and everything is better and all that kind of stuff. So again, keep the feedback coming. I absolutely love it at John Lund Radio or right here on the channel through YouTube or Instagram or however you do it. But we're trying to build the YouTube channel. So please, if you would, tell people, like, subscribe at John Lund Unleashed Pod. That'll do it for a Friday. Have a great Friday. Thank you for hanging out. We'll see you at Hanson's if you're going to come up there on Saturday. Appreciate it.
Thanks for hanging out with John Lund Unleashed. We'll try to be better next show, although I wouldn't hold my breath. Please like and subscribe on the John Lund Unleashed YouTube and Twitch channels. Stream us live on Twitter/X at John Lund Radio and listen where you get your podcasts. John Lund Unleashed, weekdays at 8 a.m. when news breaks and whenever Lund can put down his drink.
A bottle of rum.
Now go be productive or something. Hanging out with Lund sure wasn't.
Goodbye.